Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Yes, we're here with our good friend Mike Wilkerson, Stellium7, as well as Raphael. How you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Dude.
Thanks. How about
Pretty
you?
Good, thank you.
It's been a while. Last time we talked was like kind of a deep dive into your tech. Something that we should also mention here in case anyone hasn't seen that. And I think we've got the fixed video because the first time there was like a glitch in the content, right? So you have that.
I never got the original, so you've got that. And
Oh, really?
You're welcome to
We're gonna
upload that
that
again without the glitches.
I thought I said that to you in Telegram. Okay, so we'll re-upload the thing. There's been a glitch to that thing. So that's something worth talking about again anyway, is that
Definitely.
you were the first, just about the first, at least Wikipedia kind of points out, it's like the easiest to find for first cited source of hacker arrested in the United States, just about. How would you put that better?
I wouldn't say hacker arrested. I would say the first one charged, or not
Okay.
first charged, but the first convicted of the crime of hacking.
There we go. Yeah.
But not the first convicted. The first to go to jail, I think, would be a better way of phrasing that.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. And we did go, and that's a fascinating episode because wire fraud existed before that.
Right. Exactly. I wasn't the first hacker to be jailed, but definitely the first to go to jail for hacking.
Yeah. I mean, so
which is a dubious honor.
No, I mean, it's interesting. But there's a lot of other things about you as well, and that was something we wanted to take the time to cover in this episode. You also do the Stellium7 channel. You're climbing in and out of reality and looking into what things are in the real world, not just inside your computer. So maybe give a little backstory, a little background on you.
Oh wow, yeah. I left the hacking early, and Raf, you can't disappear like that. That just
he does. It always terrifies me. I don't know what to do with it, but it
Right here, but it's like you're the guys talking right now.
Yeah,
so
I
don't
get
need
his
to take
point.
up the screen.
I get his
you're
point.
part of this too. Yeah, what was it? What were we talking about?
What you get.
I've had a long and winding road. I've been working in Europe now for the last 20 years, 25 years. I was a student originally. I came here as an exchange student. Was in tech, worked in IT, in and out of IT, worked for IBM at one point, started a tech company in Stockholm that I later left. And I work now as a chiropractor in Spain. And I have done that for the last, in Spain for the last 11 years. And then about 5 years ago, I started digging into all kinds of different alternative subjects that, were in the backwaters of the internet, and came across a number of subjects that were fascinating to me, among them cosmology and earth shape. And a good friend of mine is Conspiracy Music Guru, who's also known as the Flat Earth Man. So he kind of cracked my brain open with some ideas about 5 years ago. And that led to all kinds of other, inquiry, looking into different subjects, because I figured if something as big as the moon landings or 9/11 or, a number of these massive things that are not what they tell us could possibly be true, then what else is a mess. And
dude, massive shout out right now to Conspiracy Music Guru. Alex, this is just what people need to be listening to in case for some reason you didn't know.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with this channel, it's one of the most epic on the internet. And his first 10 music video, all of his music, every music video he's done is just epic. And he
does such a good job. He has a great
any style. He's a one-man production machine, and he does it all himself, from the music to the singing to the video production. And he's faking space better than NASA, actually. I mean,
and he's a nice guy.
It's pretty amazing.
He's a great musician, and so I highly recommend. If obviously if you're cool, you probably already know about Conspiracy Music Guru, like Mike said, but there's surprisingly a lot of mainstream people out there, and so every once in a while I'll be like, I listen to Conspiracy Music Guru, and then they will too. So that's a good sign. Yeah,
he's had a few of his songs have been banned because they're just a little too close to the naked truth. But
you started your own channel, Stellium7, which is, I think we're just about neck and neck.
You passed me up finally.
Don't. I'm just. We don't have to be. This isn't what this is about. You come here to me like this. No. But yes,
Yeah,
wow, good job. You're
Well,
catching up again. So you
yeah.
surpassed me several times. What is this? This is not a
Chasing
pony
each
trick.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's got a lot of followers actually, and people love his videos. Not just because you're just such a fun personality. I mean, you are though. I mean, this is great. You're walking around in Spain. Anytime I'm not walking around in Spain, I like to think about times I've walked around in Spain vicariously through you, with you. You know what I mean? So that's a big thing. If I didn't care about anything else, I still would love these videos. If I was just looking for like a nice YouTube video, but there's so much more. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? There's just a little bit. There's a little bit beyond the naked eye, but not really. Most of it is right there for the naked eye, and then a little bit of camera assist. Like you've got the optical zoom, so you can see Ibiza.
Yeah, I mean, it was with my phone. I didn't have a powerful.
Where's the
camera
curve?
there, but
That's the thing, you know. Yeah,
I'm still looking for it.
Dude.
Yeah, it's
Maybe before you continue, I'm just gonna drop in this case total promotion. So anyone who's interested in Stellium7 and maybe some things we don't get to talk about today, there is Team Rabbit Hole episode 236 with Stellium7.
that was a
And
fun one.
also there is Team Rabbit Hole episode 264 because of Stellium7 with Conspiracy Music Guru. And yeah, awesome people, obviously. So check it out. And I also love Conspiracy Music Guru's videos, I gotta say. And of course, Stellium7. I'm surprised that you haven't talked about this with him before, Andreas. So you went chronologically first through the hacking. But yeah, let's get into the meat of the thing. No, if you have never discussed this on this channel, I'd be surprised. No.
Which part are you saying?
Well, the
We got
Titan
in-
blood part and
Oh,
the
right,
Hearthstone
right.
part.
Well, we've
got-
talked a
got
little bit
into
about
it a bit.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I mean,
but
the
this
last time we were talking about the hacking quite a bit, but then we got into some of the research that I've been doing over the last 4 years since I started the channel. And originally, so Alex got me looking at things like Earth shape, and I was going down a whole bunch of other rabbit holes before that. Before I knew there was a Team Rabbit Hole, I didn't realize I was a member of it.
Yeah,
But I kind of grew up in the rabbit hole in some ways, so you know, it's just like treading water. But so Alex got me thinking about some different stuff, and then I came across some videos looking at different aspects of geology and pondering whether the timelines were off completely on what, you know, we've been told by mainstream geology about how long it takes for things to form and you know, how they form, and, you know, the age of the universe and all these kinds of things, and came across videos talking about things like rapid petrification. Some call them mud fossils. The idea that it all happens a lot more quickly than we realize, you know, and that was a new idea for me, and it didn't surprise me one bit, especially considering that you know, the Earth may not even be what they tell us. So yeah, I started looking at the rocks differently, and then there was a video by Sylvia Ivanova, or it wasn't by her, but it was on the New Earth channel, that was No Forests on Earth, No Forests on Flat Earth, and that was looking at the you know, the mesas and a lot of these different mountain shapes and structures, and it's pear-shaped.
I just gotta get a quick "it's pear-shaped" in there because there's a couple comments in the peanut gallery going on right now about the curvature. And I was like, I just want to remind you very, very scientifically here that our founding evangelical Neil deGrasse Tyson did say, you know, hail Saturn, and it's pear-shaped. So that explains a lot about the confusion of the curvature. We can go back to sleep. Anyway, keep going.
They say it's an oblate spheroid, but I've seen no evidence of that. They don't even have a live stream, you know, that doesn't cut out. So it's yeah.
If superheroes were real, do you realize how many
NASA?
if superheroes were real, do you realize how like Superman would probably be a flat earther? You know what I mean? Like, think about what that would do to, like, and not just Superman, Clark Kent, right? So it would affect like the media. I don't know. All right, let's keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, what do you want to know? Well, you
Well, so
Listen.
here's the deal. Let's break people's consciousness open a little bit and just suggest to them for a second that these rocks are made up of living, the biology makes up geology sometimes too. Not just that geology makes up biology. What's your theory here? Because this is something I've always believed and you found evidence for.
Right. I coined the term biogeology. A lot of people are familiar with mud fossils, and I wasn't trying to like steal his thunder by coining that term, but I felt that it wasn't really applicable. If a lot of the stones that we see are actually formerly flesh or bone of one type or another, and I'm not talking about regular fossils. I'm talking about, the stones that we see that we're taught are created, in the classic ways. You've got your igneous and your metamorphic and your sedimentary rock, right? And the sedimentary layers are going to compress, especially if they're under the seafloor, and all of the wildlife is going to die, and that's going to compress in there, and that's giving us our sedimentary layers. And then they tell us all of their different techniques for dating these things, and they give us the numbers, and there's a lot of controversy when you start to dig into some of this stuff, and you find out that not everything is just the way they say, and that a lot of different techniques that are supposedly accurate may not be. And as you dig into them, they were hotly contested and debated along the way as they were implemented. And then it's just like no, the science is decided, and so yeah, there's a whole lot to this realm that is really far out, and it doesn't really. It's not so easily explained when you look at the explanations they give it. But,
so let's look at, for example, right here. This is a rock that we both saw. I think you showed me this particular rock, right? Like when we were in Spain.
Yeah. So that is what I'm calling a chunk of Titan bone, and so to start with that is kind of difficult for people unfamiliar with the topic to even begin to grasp. But
we can come
the
back.
idea is that there's a mountain here in that's near the village that I live,
Mm-hmm.
that I believe is a fallen Titan that is at the very least a vertebrate, but could very well be an elephant. So you've got this massive 3-mile long mountain that looks very much like an elephant, and from a variety of different directions. So that's a crazy idea for most people to even begin to grasp. Montgo, Montgo.
Montgo. I did that right? No,
No, an E in there.
There we go. Let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Here's this.
Yeah, so that's looking at it from the front with the head slightly turned. That's from the side, and it's affectionately known in this region as the elephant, because from a variety of different directions you can see that the eye is placed where the eye should be. The head is the shape it should be. There's little cutouts right where the head meets the shoulders. If you look at it from above on Google Earth, there's ribs that are coming down to the sides. There's a big canyon that goes right between where the legs would be. So just looking at it from a macro level, there's already a whole bunch of interesting coincidences that go beyond Paridolia, right? Well, some would say, no, it doesn't go beyond Paridolia because this is a batshit crazy idea. But Paridolia is when you're looking at something and you're recognizing a pattern and it's not actually what you think it is. You can see things in clouds that aren't really there, and you can look at rocks, and there's an interesting
Jesus
example
on
of
toast.
it. Yeah.
Right.
So that's that there is a stone that ties into a whole other aspect of the research. So maybe you can go to something more interesting than that big hunk of a rock. But the basic.
I was going to start with the question when we were looking at this area here. So what would, for instance, be, just on a simple level? Let me go. How far do I have to go to see this part?
Right. So this is what I would call cortical bone. So you got two different kinds of bone. If you look at the long arms of the body or the skull, you've got the hard portion of the bone is layered like rings of a tree, and I think it's probably better if I take over the screen because you're just bouncing all over the place, and there's not going to be anything coherent.
I was looking at the bones. I thought that, yeah. If you got, let me
Okay.
throw you. If you've got, can you you want to try a screen share?
Sure, I can do that. Hold on. Let me
See if it's
Do I need
if it's
to
unlocked.
Present. Share screen.
What would the Titans have eaten? Crypto Alchemist asks. People. No, I don't know for sure, but
Yeah, maybe there was titanic fruit as well. I don't know. It's hard to imagine what a. So you're seeing my screen now, right?
oh, there we go. I mean, you know, the there is the thing on avocados being originally for giant animals, and that they're one of the last survivor fruits of that period because most of the other fruits couldn't have been digested by smaller animals, so it had to be smaller. But
that's a new one for me. I hadn't heard that. Okay, wait a minute. Let me get something here. So. All right, so just looking at
hold on, because that thing is going like that's an infinite void.
there we go.
Okay,
Is that better?
And really, yeah, but now because of my ADHD, I need to show the
right. So I wasn't planning on getting into a whole.
I just want to corroborate my psychopathy here and say yes, avocados, giant sloths. Okay, now I feel better. All right, we're done.
They ate avocados, pits and alls. Okay.
Yeah, and then so they pooped them out, and that's how they got these giant avocados everywhere. All right, but yeah, your screen is showing this deep. Oh, okay.
Yeah, there we go. So wait a minute. Let me pull this up down here so I can see you also. All right. So obviously these are photoshopped on these tusks. That's not the the real tusks, and I don't know if tusks actually were on this creature to begin with, but there are a number of elephants or pachyderms that don't have tusks, so it didn't have to have had tusks. But this is what I was talking about before. You can see the shape of the head, and it curves in here, right where the back would be. Portions of the mountain are missing, but if you get on Google Earth, you can zoom around in 3D and see it from a lot of different angles. And this is looking up from below, and there's a lot that's interesting about the eye, and we went into this a bit last time, but the thing about the anatomy of this is I started off looking at this from an anatomical perspective, and that's what I was going to show here. So we launched right into the most complicated part of it, which is the cortical and the trabecular bone, and so that's getting into what is known as histology, which is the breakdown of tissue. So if we look here, so this is what I was talking about with the periosteum. Right. Sorry, let me get that out of there. There we go. That wasn't there. Okay, so this when we're looking at that portion that you were showing, I believe that is the cortical bone. So you have the periosteum, which is this fatty layer on top of the bone, and then this is trabecular bone, and that's like Swiss cheese, and that's on the inside here. And so this kind of there's limestone that's all over and throughout this mountain. So if we look at the breakdown of bone, you have these long lines here, and you can see it better here. You can see these are osteons, and it grows like rings of a tree. And there's vascularity, which is the word for blood vessels going through it, but it's very, very infrequent, and they're larger channels. And then this is fractal. So it goes from very large down to, this is under a microscope is how it looks. So this is fascinating because all over the mountain is limestone that looks exactly like this, that has iron ore going all throughout the bone. So this is a femur, a cross section of a femur. This is the femur with the blood removed, but you can see the red is still in there. And then this is an example of countless stones that are on the mountain that have these channels going through them. That it's known as karst, and they would say that this is from water erosion, but this is fractal in nature. So you've got these channels going through. It's filled with red earth and iron ore, and you can see it here. And the iron ore is caked to the outside. So there, when you're looking at the mountain, you've got the macro view, and then you've got actual anatomy, which like the eye, for example, and and this is getting into the histology. This is what iron ore looks like, and this is iron ore attached to the limestone. So mainstream geology tells us that limestone is actually made of compressed mollusks and skeleton and coral and shellfish. So the mainstream model when it comes to limestone and it comes to, you know, what geology is saying about it is they're telling us that this kind of stone is made of bone. They're not saying it's Titan bone, obviously.
Right.
But
the blood is made of the same kind of iron, and exactly.
Right. And oh, that would have been a good thing to show. So let's see. Here we go.
It's actually really akin to early 19th century science as well, like the ideas of the Titans, the idea that biology was combining together to make up nature. That's what Chardin was saying as well. I mean, this is just tons of evidence for it. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So you can see here that this has got all kinds of little micro lines going through it, and then it's got these channels going in. It's caked with iron ore, and then you'll also find all sorts of quartz all throughout this area, and you'll find that first stone that you were about to show actually shows the blood vessel remaining inside of the channel. So the channel is filled with red earth and iron ore, but it's actually coated with quartz. So in my theories about titanology and just biogeology in general, I believe that fat and fat, nerve, ligament, tendon, disc, all of those things are going to petrify to quartz of varying types depending on what their histological composition is. So that's the fourth video of the series. I go into looking at the breakdown of the histology and looking at the actual composition of blood. For example, you got the red blood cells, which are going to be your iron. That's why it's red. And then the plasma is primarily long chain fatty acids. So that's going to break down to quartz of varying types. And again, we've gone into like some of the most detailed stuff right from the beginning. So it's not really the best way to present this information.
This is interesting right here, though. The plasma versus white blood cell versus, I mean, so when you showed the rocks when I was there, it's indicative of all the same materials and in the same quantities. Exactly.
Yeah. So all of the components are there. So you've got the thicker, and then you're going to have this Swiss cheese. This is going to be filled with blood and plasma, and the red blood cakes together, and that's giving you the iron ore. This is on the top of the mountain. So if you think of skull bone, the Swiss cheese kind of bone that you see here is of a much smaller nature than what it would be in the long bones. So you get this really fine version of the same thing, but in other portions, like this is known as karst. So this is all bone in mainstream geology. And when I first started to talk about this subject, a geologist took me to task, and he started calling me an idiot. And he said, "Well, if you just looked a little more closely, you would have seen that there's all kinds of different, skeletons and little chunks of shellfish and coral and whatnot that are that are embedded into this stone. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because I'd been hiking around this mountain for years and years, and I never saw any examples of those things in any of this stone. So I went out and got a microscope, initially a 60x, and then later I found a Wi-Fi 1000x microscope. So here you can see this is the cortical bone. These are the layerings of the way it lays down. So it's like also like rings in a tree. And so when I went out with a microscope, I proved that this particular kind of limestone, there's other kinds of limestone in the world, but this particular kind has no signs whatsoever of any shellfish or skeletal remains or anything. It's
Do you have a picture of cortical bone?
Yeah, I will.
So meantime, I'd just like to say, Mike, didn't you, or Andreas, didn't you open this up with Paridolia in terms of seeing things that aren't there? So maybe, Mike, you're just not applying enough Paridolia like those researchers to actually see the shellfish, which maybe actually aren't there.
Right.
So, you know, it always goes to the question, how much of this is projection? And usually it is. And then, yeah,
Well,
maybe
if there were
just
bugs,
let me mention one thing. Maybe you want to bring up the concept of paramineralization again, because I found this explanation really useful, because just understand that and then imagine it accelerated, and people already know history is a fraud on this channel. So it's easy, I think, then to relate.
If there were bugs or anything like that that came to live in what was left over after something died, like maggots or something on the dying flesh, there's also going to be a number of animals that are burnt away in stomach acids or whatever gut fauna that's living in a giant beast. So there's a lot of reasons why it would be erased. Wow, I have not seen this particular mushroom. I'm very impressed.
Right. So there's a lot of debates that these are totally not mushrooms, and this gets into the whole, all the different factions that exist in the community right now. But Paridolia is like, if you think that is an elephant rather than a tree, that's Paridolia.
Well, what if it's a tree now, but it's like reincarnated from a ghost elephant?
Right. Yeah. Well, there's an infinite number of possibilities, I suppose. Yeah. So I did a whole stream on the subject of Paridolia a few weeks back. It was a long stream because I wanted to cover these different ideas of Paridolia, the Dunning-Kruger effect, cherry picking, all the different mistakes that people make when they're doing research and they start to make claims. Like there's a lot of people who believe that this is something that is a tree, and I'm aligned with that. But to say this is a cat or a dog, you got a healthy imagination. So people who are looking at the facts and pointing out anomalies are usually being mocked, and this whole debate about whether these are giant slag heaps from ancient miners, or this is the remains of a tree stump. Some of them are just sliced right across. Some say this is the remains of mining. You've got the big trees category. You've got the melted buildings people. They're saying everything is just a melted building. But there's so much evidence in my mind for the grand trees, and I constantly recommend a channel called Hangman 1128, because he's got by far and away the best footage in the world when it comes to the great trees. So it was actually this subject initially that got me pondering the possibility that, well, if there were great trees, then maybe there were great beasts as well. And there's a lot of old myths and stuff that's in the religious texts where they're talking about these creatures that were the size of mountains. So it's like if the avatar-sized trees, these giant trees the size of mountains, were a possibility, then I don't see any reason why creatures couldn't have also been a possibility. And they tell us everything was much bigger back in the day, in the fossil record. So this is a fascinating topic because it's starting to divide people.
So what do you think about some of this stuff? So a lot of the official stories here are what, mushroom excrement, right? It's like minerals being excreted from fungus. Is that right? Or what's the official narrative anyway on the mesas, of those giant mesas?
I don't know.
That
I don't
picture
know.
you just,
Yeah,
if
I mean,
you go back 2 or 3 pictures, there's one that you show that I think is in Scotland, and it has these. It's like a tree, but it looks like almost like cubes rising up along the side. It's the third picture back that you presented. The official story a lot of the time. Here we go.
this one.
You go back a couple more, one more. That one. So that was it. One more forward.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the official story here, right, is that mushrooms are growing and excreting mineral, and the mineral is poured out. It's supposed to have to do no.
No, that's not the case at all.
Is this the volcano one? What's the one that they're telling you?
Yeah,
Which one?
these are basalt columns that they say are formed from cooling lava, and I find that to be utter bullshit. Because, I mean, I've seen lots of different manifestations of lava. I've never seen lava cool in any kind of a cohesive geometrical pattern sort of a way. So whether this is some kind of giant, a giant tree or giant mushroom, some people believe. A guy from Mud Fossil University believes that it's this is just a giant tendon, an Achilles tendon of a titan, which I find to be far fetched. Because where's the rest of the creature? Like an Achilles tendon is going to be there sticking up out of the ground. It doesn't make sense to me. But when I see something like this does not look like mining waste. It looks, to me, this looks very much like a tree. And I'll show some stuff later on that, will probably convince a lot of people that this is possible.
Right.
But these are pictures that have been circulating now for years, ever since that No Forests on Flat Earth video. And a lot of people have added to it along the way. This is a mountain from my hometown called Chiefs.
Let me really quickly zoom in on here just for people who aren't familiar, just with the columnar basalt. It looks like cables snapping. It looks like anything other than the official story. All right, I'll jump back. There you go.
Oh, I didn't realize you. Okay.
Your screen is zooming in on itself.
Right, I know, but
there we go.
There we go. Where is it? There. But I'm not. Am I sharing still or no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, this is an example of Paridolia. I think this is a mountain called Chiefs Peak in my hometown, and I've flown around this thing back in the days when I was flying hang gliders. I flew around the nose, and so I've seen this from all the different angles, and it doesn't, from above or from the other side, it doesn't look like an Indian chief, but that would be Paridolia, right? As with this, if you think that's an elephant.
Or something else with a dirtier mind.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's important that people don't just jump off the deep end when it comes to this kind of stuff. And when it came to the mountain, the first thing I did is I got on Google Earth and started looking at it in 3D. Because you can tilt it and look at it from all kinds of different angles. So it's taking a little while to load.
I do like the Godzilla cloud. The Godzilla cloud was nice.
Yeah, definitely. Godzilla.
And even if you don't believe in Godzilla cloud believes in you. But this is true. Paridolia does exist. It's important to acknowledge it. It's acknowledging that Paridolia exists. That's important and of it's a scientific pursuit. But some of this stuff seems a little beyond that. But okay. Oh, this is nice.
Yeah, it's not an ET tree. All right. Still loading.
Did you see that show, The $1 Billion Code, about the company Terra Mars or Terra?
No,
Nova?
I haven't had a chance to get to it, but yeah. I kind of read up on it a little bit, and it doesn't surprise me one bit.
Right.
So this is in Iran, I think, and it's known as the Elephant Mountain.
Oh, that was a cute elephant.
Yeah, and it does kind of look like it's turning towards us. And so if there was a cave here, I'd be like, all right, this is something worthy of exploring. And that was the thing when it came to this subject with, let me turn these star forts off. So many of these things. There we go. So when it came to this mountain, initially I was just like, wow, what if, it's a silly idea, but if a whole bunch of other stuff that's totally crazy is true, then then why not this as well? But so this is what it looks like. Now, when I first made videos about this, the second and the fifth video, if I go to my channel here real quick, I'll just show. Here we go. All right, here's the channel here. So I made a video about it. The second video was about the eye of Montgo, just what I found in this location right here. The third video was about the ear. I didn't know, but at the time that I was starting this research, there's a curved cutout here that looks just like an ear attachment, and right there is a cave going in, and it's incredibly well explored cave by archaeologists who've gone in and they've done 3D mapping and found skeletal remains, and it's incredibly fascinating. So I made the third video about that. Fourth video is about the tissue, showing the breakdown of all the different manifestations of these different kinds of rock and how they match perfectly with vertebrate anatomy, which, you know, at some point you have to start asking, like, how many coincidences does it take before it's no longer a coincidence? You know, maybe it's actually you've got the beginnings of a preponderance of evidence. So you can see here how the eye just opened up.
Yeah.
Right. When I first made videos about this eye was all open. And then after the second and third video, what somebody at Google Earth did was, as you zoom out, it all blurs in now. Didn't used to do that. And
right.
So the fifth video I made was about additional discoveries at the eye that actually, you know, we discovered together because you and I and Victor were up climbing around in this thing. And one of you, I can't remember if it was you or Victor, noticed that the whole back side of this, there's this section that jets up here inside the cave. And I had a picture of it earlier. Let me see if I can find it quick. And that section that jets up is exactly where the eyeball would be located. And the remains of the eyeball are actually there. And it sounds utterly crazy, but I can show you what I'm talking about.
I mean, thank God it's true, because otherwise we could be dead, you know, climbing inside of a giant eyeball. I know what we were thinking.
Yeah, it's a good thing you didn't blink. So here we're just below it. This is that section that's jutting upward, and you can see all of this upper portion of the cave is unbroken. So there's a whole bunch of rocks that are just inside here, and it doesn't make any sense how they formed or where they came from. But what makes even less sense, unless this is the remains of a Titan, is this whole section here. The entire backside of this is covered with a 10-inch thick layer of crystal. The entire thing. So if you look at the eye, this is obviously human, but there are these lines where the bones meet, like the frontal bone and the maxilla and the zygomatic arch. They're these sutures, and they're lines and they're fissures where the blood vessels and the nerves go. And so those are in specific places in vertebrates. Like if you look at an elephant skull, here's an elephant skull. And this is what I do in great detail in videos. So I'm just giving kind of a cursory.
That's an elephant skull?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
without the schnoz, that's really interesting.
Right. So here's another. There's a lot of variations just in elephants. They vary
man, it looks like a
dramatically.
British guy. That's so weird.
Right. So this line here is this suture between the frontal bone and the bone, and then this is actually a big muscle, and then the eye socket is in here. So the interesting thing is also, wait, I'm going to show one more thing right here. See this hole? This is called the infraorbital foramen, and there's little blood vessels and nerves that go through here. Well, in an elephant, they're here. So if you think of an elephant like this,
where is it
back?
Okay,
it's right here.
Yeah.
So there's actually a hole going through there, and just like the humans that I just showed you.
So nose to eye.
There, yeah, it's closer to the nose, and if the head is tilted back, which is how Montgo is laying, then this is going to be like horizontal, right? Well, that's exactly what you see right here.
Yeah.
There's a cave going right through there horizontally, and you can see this isn't what it really looks like in there, because this is blurry because of Google Earth.
No, it's nice in there. It's kind of comfortable. You could have a beer, No, but
Right.
there's like a nice
Yeah.
there's like a
Well, there's a whole deeper version,
Yeah.
a deeper portion of the cave, which you and I and Victor all explored, and you can see it. Let's see, where is that? No.
one of
It's
those things where I'm like,
too many
where are
tabs
we?
open. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted the one. Oh, here. There we go. So yeah, right here, there's you, there's me, and this is looking through. So we're just below what I'm saying is the eyeball, looking through this infraorbital foramen, which is exactly where it should be if you think about the skull of an elephant. So
Right.
that's looking up, and it's over here. I'll show it in a second in another way. This is looking through. So when you get up and you look at this rock, there's no hint of any fossils anywhere. There are no shellfish or skeletons or anything. It looks very biological. It looks like it formed, it grew. It doesn't look like any kind of sedimentary layering. And where you see the black dripping down, this would be the petrified venous blood, the blood that doesn't have the iron ore in it, or the iron in it, right? Hemoglobin binds to oxygen, and hemoglobin has iron in it. So yeah, so you can see how biological this stuff looks and this is where I was going with this. So I showed before the picture with the these different bones and where they're meeting, and this line goes exactly in that location where it should be.
Wow.
So if you look here, we're talking about this line right here, and it does this little jog, and then it continues, right? And that is exactly what this does. And you can see there's an overlay there. So we're getting into real specificities, right? And if you're going to approach something as crazy as this, trying to use a scientific method to the best of your ability, then at some point you need to bust out the anatomy books and you have to try and make predictions, which is what I did. So before going up to the eye and just doing a bunch of filming and photographing to come back and try and convince people, hey, this is the eyeball of the eye socket of a Titan, I decided I'm going to bust out the anatomy books. I'm going to look at 3D anatomy online. I looked at lots of different kinds of elephant skulls, and I had a list of things I would expect to find when I went up there. And I was not expecting to find nearly as many as I did on that first journey. It was basically 10 different anatomical correlations in the eye socket alone. So that gets into what I was saying before, a preponderance of evidence. So this is the beginning of the list of coincidences. The overall shape, position of the eye, the shape of the eye.
It's important for people to know, like, you weren't just trolling, you weren't like having a supplied answer yet. You just happened to start counting up mathematically impossible numbers of coincidences, and how many coincidences before mathematically impossible starts to get up there. You're like, okay, well, maybe I should look into this.
Yeah, I actually recently had a statistician watch some of my videos, and he chimed in. He says, I don't know anything about anatomy. I don't know anything about, I don't have any training in doctor, or geology. But what I can tell you is the number of coincidences that you are gathering, the specificity of them does not make any sense when it comes to random chance. So
yeah, that's the real.
Here we're looking at the head, and this whole section of the mountain has collapsed. That's according to mainstream geology. So the left half of the head has all collapsed down, and it flows down here. And this whole region, which I've hiked zillions of times, is all just one big sea of this cortical and trabecular bone broken into bits and flowing almost like rivers down the side of the mountain. Whereas this side is well preserved, and you get a little bit of this breakage and this canopy that sits around the mountain. But I mean, look at this. Right where the head ends, you get a curving inward on both sides where the neck meets the back. And then you can see the faint outline of ribs from here, but you can also see them when you get down and you look at it like this. Right. So then we're looking at potentially the remains of a rib cage. And here where the back legs are,
so hard to hide.
right here we're looking at where this portion is missing. You can see it's broken off here, but this is a deep canyon that you can hike up, and you go right up between the middle of the legs, and you can go straight up the back. You know, how many coincidences is that already? And then as I got into this, after I went to the eye and I found all this stuff at the eye, you know, I started documenting these things and I started writing them all down. And that list is up to it's up to 56 now, or maybe even more.
Don't go through the whole list. Never mind. I
No,
thought you. I thought you. I was like, wow, look, he's already gotten up to 20.
Yeah, no, it's gone
60.
way past 20, right?
Yeah.
And I'll show some of that stuff. But like I said, my intention wasn't. I've got a bunch of interviews where I've gone into lengthy, you know, go-throughs of all of this material. So there's a lot of other things that we can talk about. But going back to the eye.
Do yourselves a favor, and if you're interested in this, look up Stellium7 and start getting into this research, because there's just so much here. And I think just a real quick cap, throwing my hat into like the stories here. When I was in the cave, when Stellium took us through the Mount Monco cave, we got into this socket. I was like, "What is this thing?" It's like, well, it's kind of like an eye, you know. I call it, and I was thinking, that is kind of a lot like it, and then more and more it started to seem like it, but then we got deeper into the eye, right? And that was where it started to be, well, if this continues,
and that footage is in this video. So this is where I show the breakdown of the, well, I can just skip through a little bit here. Show the I go into, you know, the detail with the things I was just talking about, showing, like here, for example, this is the optic fissure in an elephant bone. I mean, an elephant skull. And then this is, oh, it's running. I didn't realize it was running. There. Right. And so this is in the exact same location in the cave as this. You know, this is just one more of a whole lot of very specific coincidences. This is the backside of that cresting portion that juts upward, that is entirely covered in crystal. So this whole back side of this, and this is a different kind of stone, is covered. So when you see an eyeball, whoops, clicked on the wrong button there. When you see an eyeball, let's see, I should be showing it here. Like there you can see it from the side. So either you or Victor pointed that out to me, and it was just like a major aha moment, because this is just exactly what the back of an eye socket or an eyeball looks like when it's removed from the body. And
I remember from hockey.
Ask yourself, what are the odds? This is a supposed petrified dinosaur eye. I don't believe that. So this is the sclera, this white portion of our eyeballs, and then we'll get back to what you were talking about in a second here with the.
Well, so I mean, you show that percent. Yeah, there.
Yeah, this is what an eyeball looks like, open, right? This is your retina inside.
Like gooeyiness.
There's this gelatinous material, and then the whole back portion where this has been removed from the body is all this just really kind of chunky, fatty layering.
Yeah.
So,
which has got crystalline salts and everything inside of it as well.
Yeah, well, all of the fat is made of long chain fatty acids, right? So whether you're talking about ligament, tendon, disc, fascia, the pericardium, the sacs that surround our organs, all of that stuff, I believe, is going to petrify to varying different types of quartz, depending on what the makeup of it was, as far as the histology. And there you can see this is what the backside was. It's not hard to imagine this crystallizing to quartz, right? I mean,
right.
If you found a way to petrify it, it would probably petrify to quartz. And in fact, I've got a lot of stones that I've looked at under the microscope, and when you look at them at 500 and 1000x, a lot of these stones, which I believe are petrified organs, they look exactly like fascia and blood and iron. It's all the exact same materials. So, there's your as above, so below of the Hermetic teaching, right? It's
Stellium.
It's fractal, folks. It goes down to the microscopic and up to the potentially continental. So take a look at this. This is exactly what the whole backside of that portion that's
Yeah.
sticking upward looks like. And so later in this video, we end up going deep into the cave. Oh, this is great.
Don't you mean go deep into the vitreous chamber? But yeah,
Into actually we went into the sinuses is what we went into, because that's the portion that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
behind and below the eye. So this is what long chain fatty acids look like, right? These are all the different kinds. You got your salmon, you got your olive oil, etc. That's all long chain fatty acids. This is what happens. This is human serum albumin. So going back to the composition of blood, you've got your red blood cells here, and then you've got everything that they're floating in. That's your
Right.
blood plasma, right? Well, if you take blood plasma and you remove all of the liquid from it, you get quartz crystal, basically. So isn't that a coincidence? And this is what it looks like
Mike, while
under a
you're on it,
microscope.
Can you please bring up paramineralization, the wiki page or anything?
Oh yeah, you
again,
asked
'cause
that
I think
ages
it's
ago.
relevant.
So paramineralization.
Because then it's not
So-
like a theory anymore. It has a wiki page. I mean,
Right.
real
So
authority.
when
but
they're talking about
understandable.
fossilization in general, I mean, when a good thing to think about is this, because this is undeniable: petrified trees, right? Not the giant avatar trees in the mainstream model, but petrified trees. Nobody
Right.
denies their existence.
Arizona. Yeah.
But they're telling us 200 to 300 million years to form these things.
That's a long time.
And they're very glossy. You know, this is done through what they call paramineralization. And the way this works, and this ties into the whole mud fossil theory of Roger Spurr and nephorensics of Allen from Mud Flood Was Armageddon. These are two channels that have been talking about the stones being flesh of different types for the last 7 years or so. They were out there, you know, before a lot of this stuff, people started looking at it. They were already talking about it. But basically, the idea is that this is surrounded by mud, or, you know, mud combined with different kinds of materials. And then what happens is slowly the gases and the liquids that are inside the wood are going to work their way out. And then the minerals that are in the surrounding medium, whatever that is, are going to work their way in. And that composition of minerals combined with the composition of the tree itself is going to give you all of these different colors and that composition. So that process is called paramineralization. And it doesn't just happen to trees. It happens to, you know, a wide variety of things. Where I disagree with the mainstream is that I think this all happens far, far quicker. Like, for example, if you think about layers of strata, you know, this is one of the stories they give us, is these all lay down and we can date things based on what we find in these layers. And sometimes it's circular reasoning, because when you find they're talking about different fossils that are a certain age, they say, well, we know they're that age because they're found in the, you know, the Precambrian or the Pleistocene layer, right? So there's a bit of kind of what do you call it, reification of the theories. But you know, they're giving us hundreds of millions of years for the formation of this stuff. Well, that's kind of BS, because there's research that's been done where you can see, for example, at Mount St. Helens, you know, literally within a few hours, you got very complex layering that formed through the slurry flow of the volcanic runoff. And you got this micro layering that mainstream geology tells us takes thousands and thousands of years to form.
Right.
So that formed in a matter of hours. So
that's
there's
the thing.
a lot to look at.
Is instant fossil? So how long can instant fossilization take? Because as far as I'm aware, it can take a long time to instantly fossilize too. Hours, days. It doesn't, as long as it's not millions of years. I mean, so what's the deal with instant fossilization?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different theories about instant fossilization. There's a guy named Mungo Jup. Instant fossilization, I believe, is the name of his video. Yeah,
like instant fossilization could take a century.
He's with the whole Thunderbolts project, and they're looking at the universe from an you know, that the universe is electric. They don't go with the mainstream model, but they're actually, you know, they're engineers and physicists, and there's some, you know, pretty knowledgeable people that are part of that group. that are sharing that cosmology. But this is a video where Mungo Jup is talking about different theories surrounding this. But I think it's in this interview he talks about a situation where there were power lines that went down and they laid across I think it was several different trees, and they were laying on these tree trunks. So someone had come along and cut down the trees long before. Then when the power went out, the lines laid down across these trees, but the current didn't cut out. So the current was going through these trees for something like 6 hours, and basically it petrified the trees. And it didn't just petrify the stumps, it petrified the entire root structures.
Whoa.
So there's a lot of stuff, when you look into like electric mining. There's a guy on Facebook named Mike Ferreira who digs into electric mining. And he, if you look at all the different, like this is one thing, talk about factions and people arguing with each other, a slag heap. If you look at these mesas that everyone's calling tree trunks, well, some of them could well be slag heaps, because that's how slag forms, right? If you think of mining on a much grander scale, so that what we call volcanoes might be former cinder blocks of whoever built the ancient world, right? The world that's no longer here. So slag heaps is an explanation for some of these tabletop mountains, but there's a lot of them where there's some where you can actually see what appear to be tree rings. You've got Devil's Tower, you got the basalt columns. These things to me don't make any sense when you look at the mainstream geological explanations. And it's interesting that they use a lot of the same terminology for geology that they use for biology. So when you're looking at these different layers of tissue, like the epidermis, you're finding similar kinds of terminology. And what if we're on the back of some gigantic creature? Who knows? Maybe the world itself is a creature, and we're just little cells within it. It's far out to ponder. But so I didn't jump off the deep end. I really went at it methodically and pulled in a lot of resources, and that's what the whole series really goes into. And going back to here, we went into the cave. Here I'm talking about the fractal nature of blood vessels.
Right.
I'm showing all the different ways in which that manifests in the mountain, and it makes no sense if you think of water erosion. where did that go?
Right. If this was geological, it should have just washed away. There's just no reason that this would have formed the way it did, unless it was biological.
So this is how blood vessels grow, right? And they branch off, and it's all smooth on the inside, and the blood's flowing through this, and it gets into smaller and smaller channels. Well, if you think of this as a stone, this black here, and the red is a channel going through it, you could maybe imagine that somehow there's going to be a rivulet of water that's going to go over a long period of time, and it's going to eventually form a channel through the stone, right? But you wouldn't expect that to form a channel and then branch off in different directions all over the place, form new channels, and keep branching off and branching off. That doesn't make sense to me.
It should do the exact opposite.
Erosion.
It should do the opposite. It should come together.
They tell us what the Grand Canyon was formed by the Colorado River. I don't believe that for a second either. But they're saying over hundreds of millions of years it's going to form this. So this is looking at the backside of, this is all crystal, right where it should be. And then right where I'm standing, when I took this picture, this whole crystalline structure goes down towards the back of the cave where we went in. And I believe that's the optic nerve that's still there. And this is it. And it's also covered with this big, thick layer of crystal. And that's going back and down. So I'm just talking about myelin sheaths, which is these fatty cells that surround the nerves.
Oh yeah.
And so there you can see that's all crystal. This is all crystal, everything you're seeing, and it's all going back and down from behind that big structure. Fatty so crystal. How many coincidences are we up to now, just since we've been talking, right? And the critics. Oh, and here we go. Let me show this little portion here. You hear the sound? Sped it up.
I can't hear it, but
You don't
I think
hear
it's
sound. All right.
it's the way the StreamYard works. I don't
Yeah.
think you can fix it.
Yeah. So here we go. I'd have to go out of sharing and go back in. But so this is our trip when we went up, and then we're inside there. I'm showing some of that same stuff. There's that line. So you can really get a sense of it here. Like that line is exactly anatomically where it should be. It's right where my finger is pointing. And you can see the cave, and this would be the frontal bone, and this would be the maxilla. And
So crazy.
yeah, it's weird. It's like we're either in a simulation or the biblical. That's the only time you'll ever see me wearing a mask on camera, by the way, or mask in general. It is so dusty back there. You
Right.
you don't want to do it. So yeah, so we get
Yeah,
inside.
that's
this thing,
that's another interesting thing though, is that the life that, you know, like Burning Man, all of this dead, dusty, fleshy life that becomes inhalable powder, basically. And so there is a lot of that up in the cave, which also seems pretty likely to support your theory. You know, another coincidence.
Yeah. Well, and then this was the biggest coincidence of all, and it just, you know, the hair on my arm stood up when I discovered this, and that was what I showed in the third video, and this is just so far out. You got to. David Weiss called my research more disruptive than flat Earth. Because like and someone else once said it was more powerful than psychedelics, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's like taking a drug that doesn't wear off, because it's not just the mountain, it's the discoveries that I made after the mountain, which we can
Changes everything about nature and everything you see.
Yeah, if this is accurate, then I believe that, you know, the ancient miners, they built the old world by mining and using all the materials from the Titans, because the Titans and the ancient trees are creating every different substance that we know of. And Hangman 1128, the channel I was talking about, that's really the go-to channel for the giant trees. His footage is just fantastic. He's working on showing how basically everything from the periodic table of elements comes from the great trees. And he's got all the on-site footage to prove it. So, you know, we're looking at a completely different, you know, paradigm that is incompatible with the mainstream geological paradigm. That's why I coined the term biogeology, because mud fossils didn't cover it, because so much of this isn't mud fossils, like the work I've done on the petrified organs. It's not mud fossils. The only explanation for that is something cataclysmic and instant. And that gets back to your question about how long does it take? And I think, you know, I mean, if trees and their entire root structures can petrify in a matter of, you know, 6 hours or maybe a bit more, I don't know what the exact number was, then, you know, there's a lot of things that are suddenly on the table as possibilities. So right here, this is where it gets really trippy. So once I made the discoveries and I went up to the eye and you know, documented those findings, I started to suspect, well, that side of the mountain is so well preserved, the other side is collapsed, so I wouldn't expect to find a cave. But maybe, just maybe, there's another cave. If you know, if there's an eye socket, then maybe there's an ear. And so I you know, did all the this is the short version. Let me find the.
Yeah, instant petrification can take up to centuries, according to mainstream science now. So they've made it more ambiguous, even, which is amazing. But you look at the Mount St. Helens eruption, and that's a 6-hour instant petrification, which some companies have patented they've patented ways of instantly petrifying something using the same technique as this volcano, St. Helen, because it's penetrating the trees or the material with a certain amount of aluminum and silicon and other high mineral materials.
And Stellium, in your Unveiling a Titan, you also talk about this Italian dude, no? Maybe you want to bring him up.
Oh,
It's a bit
yeah.
creepy,
Yeah,
but
that's a good thing to
I guess
show.
it's
Yeah, it's the. So Girolamo Sagato, he's not the only one. Girolamo Sagato, and also a guy named, I think his last name was Bruni. They both, in the 18th century, or I guess that's the 19th century, 1800s. I always get that confused. But this guy knew how to turn any kind of flesh to stone. And,
Wow.
and the remains of his stuff is still in the museum. So Girolamo Sagato, if we do an image search, it's pretty. Some of it is pretty gruesome, but basically all of this stuff has been turned to stone.
Dang, some gnarly taxidermy right there.
Yeah, it's some really gruesome stuff, But
no, it's medical though, right? He was like a priest and into science, and there was he was doing this for science.
Well, this is a cerebellum here. This is a kidney. His secret died with him. So he, the.
Oh, and please
he
bring up
died
this
an
bust,
Epstein death
because he looks like Medusa on this bust he has everywhere. You see it with the snakes behind. Like, what is this?
Yeah, and that's when it comes to the synchronicities, also that synchronicity checklist that I was showing before. One of them is really fascinating because the name of the river that goes right by Montgo is Gata de Gorgos, which translates to the Gorgon's cat. Well, who are the Gorgons? They were the three sisters in Greek mythology, and one of those three sisters was Medusa. So these are all things apparently that he's turned to stone. Now, I haven't held these with my hand.
Also, weren't the Gorgons the good guys and small soldiers, like the little soldiers thing?
They also exist in Legend of Zelda, Gorgons. Just saying.
Yeah, so these, this is this definitely ties into Medusa. And what do we know about Medusa? Instant petrification, right? She looks at you, you turn to stone.
Gorgon's important. I'll save it for another lifetime, but man, that's a thing I'm gonna have to dig into. But okay, so Sagato, and then who else is? You got another petrifier?
Yeah, there's a guy named Bruni, petrification maybe. I think it's Bruni.
I mean, the idea here of using materials that will render or will remove anything other than the crystals, and then the crystals can grow because you've got all the material necessary for them just to keep growing. It isn't hard to imagine that there were some expensive.
I don't remember his name. Well, that gets back to the thing is mainstream geology tells us that organs wouldn't petrify because they would be eaten up by the bacteria and the different kinds of worms and larvae that would normally be deteriorating the flesh, and so the soft tissue is going to break down long before the petrification process could ever happen. That's what they're telling us in the mainstream model. What's the
difference between petrification and petrifaction?
That's a good question. I could have answered that before, but I've forgotten what it means. I think they're used interchangeably, so there might be a distinction, but a lot of people just kind of switch back and forth between them. This is something I was going to show here. So
the Google is saying organic material becoming they're basically the same. But a petrifaction tends to refer to as petrification of bone and beaks and shells survive the material. So petrifaction maybe.
Yeah. So typically what they say is bones survive because it's already hard, and the rest doesn't. And it's only in the rarest of circumstances that you would find petrified soft tissue. And I have shown a lot of evidence documenting my theory and the evidence for it that's absolutely not true, and that organs in large numbers can also petrify. But before I go away from this and close it, I just want to show that in the cave, this is obviously a human eye socket, but this is the best picture I've shown to show. There's these these channels going down at this steep angle. That's what you and I and Victor climbed down. And then we got into a narrower channel. And that's when you talked about having future phobia. And then we got into a massive space where it opens up. And guess what? That's exactly where the sinuses are in the skull. So, you know, just another of many different wild synchronicities. But the biggest one of all, see, these are those channels going down, and then the optic fissure is right here. There it is.
Yeah.
And oh, that part there is fascinating as well. So this is where that section goes down, and all that crystalline layering is. And then we get into the cave itself. But this is the part where it just really gets nuts. So see this. Looks a lot like an ear, right? Quarter moon, just like the shape of our ear. And it even kind of continues up there a little bit. And that's where that cave is that I didn't even know existed. And I went looking for it. And then the process of trying to find this trail on Google Earth and looking up some names of roads, I found that this canyon was called Cova del Middia, or Barranc del Middia, which means the Barranca of midday. And then I found a link just below that said Cova del Middia, and Cova means cave in Valenciano. And I said, wait a minute, there's a cave up there. So this is if you think of this whole section torn away, that would expose bone. And what would the shape of that exposure be? It would be a quarter moon shape. And then here where the Q-tip is going in, this is the actual ear canal. And this is the aeostation tube, which can sometimes be blocked in people. These are your inner organs. So I haven't actually been up in that cave, but surprisingly enough, that's it right there. That's the entry. There's a whole team of archaeologists and geologists that went up there to do an excavation of this cave. And I didn't even know it existed until I went looking for the cave. And when I found out that it existed, I found out that it was the most thoroughly excavated cave in all of Europe. And they had gone in with 3D mapping and 3D scanning, and they even filmed in 3D. So if you got the blue and red glasses, you can put them on right now because it'll show it does a fly through. So this is the geologist getting in. Here's their 3D mapping. And then it branches off and it goes down. So you've got this exit coming out the other side. That's the Cova del Middia. Here, this guy goes he's going to go around a corner, and I swear this looks so much like the cochlea right here. It's the spiral organ that we hear, allows us to hear frequency, and this is them excavating the skeletal remains. So when I found this out, I felt like I'd step, fully into the Twilight Zone. Here's the fly through.
Wow.
And then there's a turn to the right, and then there's going to be one. These are some of the different. Oh, I'm on 50% speed. No
it's weird.
So
it's funny because to me
so
this makes a lot of. I just want to say this makes a lot of sense. But I see some comments of people that are just like, "This is so much for people," and I don't understand why this is so much for people. Of all the things that people, because this is actually just pretty much you documenting things happening. This is you didn't even really. You could. It's such a okay. Keep going. I'll calm down.
No, totally. That's
just a brutal video.
This is just a sea of this trabecular bone with these, or what I call trabecular bone, with these channels going through every which way, covered with iron ore. And then, when you get down on the plateau where a lot more of this has been broken and exposed, you can see all this quartz formations and all the iron ore. So this is, and these I've shown you already. So
right.
Oops.
Let me for just 2 seconds, I want to show people something just for some perspective in case this is like this is that much or something. Is this the right thing? Labyrinth of Erewhon, 5 biggest animals. If you start doing a look into some of the largest animals that have ever walked the earth, and some of them aren't exactly elephants by their definition, right? This isn't technically an elephant, but this is about the size of a normal elephant. And this is the size of the Kathmandu And then if you start looking into some of these big creatures, the giant sloths that existed at 20 feet and etc., 120 feet, like some of these different things, 30 tons, 30,000 pounds. There are examples of animals, even just that we're supposed to socially accept, that kind of look like the same shape, same size, and are huge, you know. And they talk about this idea of the vapor canopy and the amount of carbon in the oxygen.
Yeah, Archaix's work is really fascinating. He's the one I think who's kind of coined that term, or at least, you know, brought it into the mainstream.
Which one?
The vapor canopy.
Ah,
I mean, he's probably gotten it from old texts. I'm not saying he's created the term, but he's the one who's definitely
popularizing it. That's great.
Popularizing it, and he's done amazing research. I've churned through probably at least 100 hours of his content because I find it very fascinating, and it ties in. I was in a live stream that he did, or not in the video, but I was in the chat, and I was asking him what he thought about instant petrification. He was saying, yeah, it can happen also through flash freezing. So if you have I mean, we know that the mammoths are there frozen and in Siberia and they died so quickly and froze so quickly that they didn't have time to rot. So apparently there are people that actually eat mammoth flesh because the meat is still good. So that obviously is not stone, but in a different scenario from what's happened in Siberia, it could easily turn to stone. Because if you have a flash freezing, if you think about the expansion of water, that can cause all of the different cell walls to burst, right? And you're going to get this kind of blending of the different tissues. And then that is going to permit the high mineral content waters to start to, because if you had the Great Flood and you've got this, these massive scale cataclysms, then you're going to have massive heat, maybe because of volcanoes, a volcanic ejection. They say that a pyroclastic flow can be as hot as 1,500 degrees Celsius and can move it faster than the speed of sound. That's pretty damn hot and pretty damn fast. So, I don't know if you've ever been in a sauna and blowed on your arm, but if you've got a hot temperature in the sauna and you blow, you can make it a lot harder, or at least your experience of it is a lot hotter. So with, whether it's super high intensity heat or whether it's some massive plasma, event, or coronal ejection, if you believe the mainstream heliocentric model, there's a lot of things that could potentially lead to these kinds of events. And somebody's rolling in something that's making a loud noise. I got distracted there.
Oh, I wonder what that was. I was going to
stop in about 20 seconds. It's the somebody's pulling in an awning slowly. There.
I was just going to quickly show because petrifaction is slightly different than petrification, even though petrified wood typifies this process. Petrifaction is the one where minerals can be replaced with other materials, so it's technically somehow different. And so someone might tell you, "Oh no, this was totally not petrification
because it's a nice cover-up story.
It was petrifaction the whole time," and then you don't realize that.
Yeah, I think this is they give us the small trees petrified like that, and they're all glossy, and then you don't see the glossy on the big scale when you're out looking at the avatar trees that Hangman so beautifully has shown. And so I'll show a bit of this footage in a moment, because I mean, if we go back to this is what I was really most interested in talking about tonight, not even my research, because I've been digging into a lot of his his footage lately, and I honestly believe that his. Am I showing my screen or no?
Not yet.
Oh, no. Okay. Present. There we go.
No.
I stop screen. Present. Share screen. Share screen. There we go. And I need to get you guys off. Otherwise, it's infinite regression, right? Are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to go quickly through some of these. So, there's so many different kinds of just utterly far out trees. This is one that has sap that's the color of blood, right? We showed, a bunch of the tree stumps earlier. This is more of the blood sap. So, I don't know. It just, sometimes things are what they appear to be. That's my take. And we're taught that, You know, in the mainstream model, that this is lava cooled and pushed upward, and then just form these perfect long hexagonal columns. And yet the bottom doesn't have that shape, and it looks very much like a tree stump. And what is interesting about root structures, and this is what Hangman has shown, is as it comes down, it curves down, it meets the ground, it goes completely parallel with the ground. So if these were ancient trees and they were miles wide, those root structures would stretch for a long way, and they would be perfectly parallel to the ground. And as they got exposed, we would see that because of the way in which roots grow and which bone grows, we would see that as sedimentary layering. So it's not so far-fetched, really, when you see the evidence. And this is the evidence that was, you know, shown, you know, going back to slag heaps. So I think, you know, some of these may like the flat top ones may just be the remains of old mining waste. But I don't for a second believe that that's the case when I see something like this. You know, this is from Hangman, his footage. And when you see this, he'll show you the exact same thing, identical, that's an inch wide. And he'll hold it up, and then he'll put them side by side. And you can see all of the different ways in which the trees this size are breaking down. And this little portion here is just a minuscule bit inside of a tree that was probably 10-mile diameter at the base. And you can see how amazing this is. It's his footage is completely self-evident. I don't care what the geologists say, and I don't care what their stories are, because he's found sections of these stones where it hasn't completely petrified, and it's still got all the colors of the original wood.
Right. That's
so
crazy.
You know, we've got all these stories of you know, Paul Bunyan and the Titans in the Greek mythology. And it was a video by Jay Dreamers that I saw called Petrified Titans, combined with the No Forests stuff. And I think this is straight from that video, this picture, that made me realize, whoa, wait a minute. If those real trees were a thing, and, you know, I mean, look at these trees. I'd never even seen these. This is a recent picture I came across. Like, if that was a petrified trunk, and it, you know, it's not going to petrify the way you would expect it to, you know, because what a weird trunk, you know?
Right. And also, if something in petrifaction, if there's no growth of anything for another 100 years out, let's say you're in, you know, a dust bowl in Nevada, right? Then nothing grows on top of it. But let's say you're not, and then things do grow on top of it, and that changes everything, because all of a sudden now you have a lot of new material to deal with.
Well, what's fun is a lot of times the trees that grow on top of the great trees are a miniature version of the same. So it's almost like the moss of the old trees survived, right? And we call those like the sequoias now.
Yeah, the young growth.
You know, that was like the little tiny ones. And then this is an amazing video. I'm not sharing sound, am I?
No, sound is not.
Okay.
No, sound is
all
not.
right, we don't need sound, but I just want to. Where is I'm hearing it though, and I want to turn it off.
You could also subtitle.
It's not showing me the.
I just think it's really funny. I don't know why I keep wanting to defend it, but so many people out there who don't. Why is it that it's okay for people to accept the Quetzalcoatlus 50-foot wingspan dinosaurs or something that like Jurassic Park and PBS put out there, but looking into super large mastodons that might have lived in Europe as opposed to in, you know, Eurasia into the West America. I mean, clearly there's examples of them. I wonder why it's so confusing, the idea of giant mastodons.
Well, I mean, the problem is, well, I mean, how giant are you referring to?
I mean, Mongo is a pretty. I can imagine elephant. I mean, we know of animals that size. We know of animals today, whales that are even almost that size.
Yeah, I mean, in my very first video I ever made, Unveiling Titan Part 1, which there's a lot of things I would change about that video because, like, for example, I showed a lot of pictures that I don't for a second believe are petrified.
Well, you were kind of joking at the time because you're like, I don't know what's going on here. This kind of looks like an elephant, right? That's hilarious.
Right.
But you were just like, hey, the point is the official story is so ridiculous that I might as well point out that it looks like an elephant at this point. I don't know.
And yeah, why not explore the absurd? You know, there's a whole lot of absurd stuff that turns out to be true when enough time passes and they allow the the truth to come out. And there's 1,000 examples of that sort of thing. I was going to show like Unveiling a Titan Part 1. The very first video
Emily
I
says
made.
dragons are greater than dinosaurs. I agree. I think dinosaur is a really poor rebranding of dragon. I think we should just go back to the original IP. You know, like
And-
it's like a bad comic book remake.
With the conspiratorial mindset, it's obvious that they would, just create all these cover-up dinosaurs, all these stories, because there's something real, of course, but it's not what they want you to know, and they don't want you to have any sense of pattern recognition and, transferring
Right,
knowledge.
exactly. I
Look-
think that they gave us dinosaurs because they wanted to hide the truth about things like dragons and titans and these other
I mean,
things. So
don't believe us. Believe this guy, the Quetzalcoatlus. That's a 50-foot wingspan with little pieces that they found. That's believable. All right.
Like the
You know.
treehouse on crack again.
Yeah, well, I've got on my community tab on my channel. There's some different articles from Ben, guy. He's got a Twitter account called Waking Up with Analog, and I linked to his Twitter account. He's got thousands of old clippings from 100-year-old newspaper article clippings and older, and it's very common. I was going to show something. I can't even find it.
Well, and pause for a second. I'm gonna show Waking Up with Analog's page there. I don't know if I can pull it up here. Waking Up with Analog. He's got a couple videos that we've done on this channel. So if you look up Analog, you'll find Ben's videos. And we're trying to do more, but he's a father, so it takes some of his time.
Yeah. He's got great stuff. So I've shared some. There's one article. It's like a 300-foot long creature that they found when they were mining below the ground. But still, that's tiny compared to Mont Go, and or one of the giant creatures like Roger Spur is always talking about the 900-mile long dragon in the Sahara. Anyone who's watched his channel has heard that probably 100 times. But if you go out and you think about the fractal nature of reality, Roger's dragon, and this has like mythological basis. In Greek texts, Plato wrote about the Leviathan attacking the behemoth. And so this is like a 900-mile long dragon, according to Roger Spur, and he goes in and looks at all the details in the anatomy of it, and that's attacking this giant fish with scales. And it sounds utterly batshit crazy, and then you find out like Plato's written about the battle, and it's kind of fascinating. And the question is, well, if that's a possibility, then what are the continents really? What is the shape of the Earth? What is, what is this, for example? Mike showed me this 13th monkey. This looks a heck of a lot like a plumed serpent, it's just a 1,500 mile long potential Titan candidate. So I don't know. I toy with that stuff. When it comes to the mountain, you've got the eye socket, you've got the ear. I found what I believe is a giant artery, and I take that up in the 6th Unveiling a Titan video, where I went into a cave with a friend, and it's 2 caves that are connected. And between those 2 caves is this long, like 15-meter or 20-meter long, massive crystalline section that goes the entire length of the cave. It's like a foot thick crystal. So that's totally consistent with what it looks like, which is a big artery, right? And then it's filled with the fatty crystalline, the inside. So going back to, where is it? Here we go. Going back to this guy's video. This is Mr. B333 or something. And he's showing in Madagascar these trunks. And there's a whole bunch of them. And then he shows that this looks exactly like, what is this, cedar fronds? I can't remember what they're called, but these are like, each one of these pieces is the size of the Empire State Building. And when you see it, there's all of these branch structures. And then at the end of these, canyons are these massive things. And that's all emanating from this big trunk. And then when you zoom out even further in Madagascar, you find that those, I can show you right now. I'll just go there.
Would gravity have been weaker in ancient times? Maybe, because it's made up. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which gravity you're invoking. Are we talking about electrostatic attraction that causes things to go down? Are we talking about Newtonian gravity? Are we talking about Einsteinian bending of warpage of space-time? I'm very skeptical of a whole lot of the mainstream science now. So here's one
theory. But yeah, Madagascar. This is huge.
Here's one here. And if you get down and you look at these things, and then you tilt, it's like,
3D maps.
It kind of looks like a tree stump. Some would say, no, that's from an old volcano or whatever. But then when you start to look around, it's like, root structures everywhere, it looks like. And you get far enough out to where the branches would have fallen. And certain times of the year, you can see it better. So like I think
John Burt's like, that's no turtleback.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a fascinating video by Mr. B 333. And, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
It's interesting, of course, you find these things in places like Madagascar and Lemuria, Lemurland. Oh man, show that again. Show the leaf.
Right.
Hat.
So this is exactly what you're seeing. This here is a smaller branch that goes to a bigger branch, and they all lead back to the trunk. And there's a bunch of them. So, that was pretty fascinating evidence. This, the Petrified Titans video, and the video of some of the stuff from Roger Spur. These are the things that got me, contemplating what 10 years ago I would have considered to be a completely absurd idea.
Right. I mean, obviously, living math fractal patterns do repeat themselves in nature, and you start to find, there are examples of fractal patterns, but it does get really interesting when you see, why is this producing this fractal pattern that we're finding in a smaller, example? What would be the cause of this to happen?
I think each different species is going to manifest differently in the way that it petrifies. I think you've got all of the different sizes, the different scale, that things can be. Then you've got whatever is the process of petrification that, I started to say, flash freezing, things would expand, breaking the boundaries between things, and then that would allow the mineral water to seep in. There's examples like Lake Natron. I'm still sharing, right?
I like what you said, though. Nature scales. The idea of something coming up with a brand new design at like a size of this ratio. No, it's going to try it small and then do it bigger if it works.
I mean, it's what we did the last 100 years with computer tech, right? Miniaturization. And then
Right.
the atmosphere may have been different. So
as in and out, both directions, right?
Yeah, there's something I was going to pull up and I forgot what it was, but let's so this is some of Hangman's footage. He's showing some of other people's footage, and you can see tree rings. So this would not be a tree because the tree wouldn't grow sideways, right? This would be the branch of one of the great trees or a root.
Yeah, weird.
Right. And so when these are just some pictures. I'll leave these running for a moment and run to the bathroom real quick. Hold on one second.
The sediment levels, just crazy. Raph, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, just take a look. I've also seen, before knowing about any of this, like strange stones, and I was wondering myself, like, this kind of looks organic, or just trying to imagine how can this be such porous material and all of that. And yeah, I mean, this is an explanation. And just as he said, if you add up the coincidences, I'm like, I'm sorry, at least this has to be reinvestigated. And the question for you would actually be, what do you think if all these scientists went there, maybe someone knew about this, that they made all this effort to do the 3D mapping and all of that?
Right. Well, I thought it was funny because, I found Mike through doing some of my more reasonable research at the time. I was like, hey, look at Teilhard Chardin's work in the idea that atoms are socializing to produce larger things. They're scaling out. There's fractal patterns. Whatever you're seeing in geology, you're seeing in biology. It should all be tied together.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, people started. So Mike, who's not really Stellium didn't have a big horse in this race. A couple years ago, he was just kind of,
Right.
he lives in Spain. He's got a job. He's got a family. He's got a beautiful wife and kids. He's got things to do. He doesn't really need to be doing this, but he goes for walks and he's interested in science. So he just started releasing the information, and we were always encouraging him to do it. But he wasn't like, you have to believe that this is an elephant. There was never a big push or something like that.
Of course, it comes from a very cautious mindset, which of course is
the opposite of what,
only gives more credence to the whole thing. Yeah.
The opposite, of course, from the science community. This is crazy. You must believe that this is a rock. Right. Like, it got to the point where it was obsessive. And they wrote, when I saw the paper, so Stellium had somebody attack him with this paper. It was like a secret agent spy kind of espionage thing. I don't know. The person was supposed to review one of the Hearthstones, and I don't even think we've gotten into Hearthstone. So
no, we haven't even mentioned them. Yeah,
you want to get to Hearthstones, but I want to say this really quickly, that somebody was supposed to do a review, a scientific test, and instead they wrote a blog about Paridolia. And I thought that was all too telling, that they couldn't bother. They couldn't be bothered to do the actual test, but instead they had to write I know this isn't real. I'm not crazy. I'm not. But crazy,
it's the obvious tactic. Blog. Don't engage in actual discussion of information and content. But
right. So now we're desperate for anyone to bother to even do scientific research because of these crazy people.
You're seeing my screen, right? My channel right now.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I've sorted these by oldest first, so you can kind of see the progression. Because what you're talking about are what I'm calling the Hearthstone petrified organs, the Hearthstone phenomenon. And it started with this rock, which I found. I was walking in a river bottom, and I picked it up, and I realized that it was exhibiting a whole bunch of anatomy. And
now we get to the heart of the matter.
We get to the heart of the matter. And this is when originally I thought it was mud fossils. So I even called it that. And even before I made this video, I sent a video of me rotating the rock in 360 degrees to Roger Spur, because as a chiropractor, I recognized the anatomy immediately when I saw this thing.
Right.
And so already standing there in the river after just a couple of moments, I realized that there was about 8 or 9 different anatomical correlations in this rock. Like this side, you're seeing the opening to the pulmonary arteries. This is the isthmus. There's a bump here and a bump here, which are the remains of the papillary muscles that open the valves. You've got the coronary artery, the coronary sulcus. This is, I show all this in detail. I'm not just making claims. I've got everything side by side with actual, anatomy. And I'm showing that this is the coronary sulcus. This is the fatty layering that sits between the left the left atrium and the left ventricle. This is all the Latin terminology.
Push T on your screen really quickly, the keyboard. Push T.
T?
Yeah. Oh, there you go. It makes it a little bigger.
Good. Yeah.
And it's interesting because
I bought an endoscopic camera. I went in and I filmed inside the chambers, because this rock also has the chambers. And so this was really, I sped it up too much there, but you can see that's going in from the aortal side. And here is interesting, because if this was just water erosion, you'd expect this to be smooth, and it's not. It's all bumpy. And bumpy is fascinating because that's exactly how trabecular carne grows, which is the inner portion of the heart muscle. When you see it, it's right. I'm about to show.
Wow. The fatty tissue.
See there, this is what I was talking about. These are the papillary muscles. They pull on the tendonae cordae, and then they pull the valves open. And so the other thing is, this is surrounded in white, but everywhere the white has been chipped or worn away, it's red inside. And that's exactly what you would expect of the pericardium. So initially, when I sent this to Roger, there were I think there were 15 different anatomical correlations that I'd identified. And he took no interest in it. And I was really surprised by that, because it was totally confirming a lot of things that he'd been saying for years. But he didn't think it was interesting. So then I was like, well, if I can find one, I should be able to find more. So I went back out into the river bottom, and I found a bunch of rocks, and then made this video. This is almost a year later. by now I've categorized all the different manifestations of the phenomenon
God,
and the way that
I
way
went
that
to
it's
Mike.
appearing.
I went to Mike's office and his house, and especially in his office, it was just like, I mean, it's a good thing that they kind of look like rocks, because if you just had a bunch of hearts in your office, I probably would have left. I'll be honest. But the fact that they were petrified made it seem somehow less sinister. But you had a lot. I'm talking like 100 or something at least examples.
Yeah, I have hundreds of
All
them, and that's the thing is it's totally scalable. Actually,
right.
this is I'll show you.
We
you know, one
were
of the best.
we swam at one point, but also down to you could wear one
Yeah,
around your
I
neck.
find them underwater. I find them buried in mud. I find them in river bottoms. I find them walking on the roads. I mean, they're all over the place, and they have this very telltale form, and
Right.
it gets very, very specific. And that's what I break down in the videos, because it's the shape, but you can also recognize that many of them have the isthmus. This one is 1.5 feet long, and on the backside of this one, it's got the aortal opening right where it should be. So it becomes this question of like, if I went out and I said, okay, find me a rock that's shaped like a kidney, you'd find it in a matter of seconds, right?
Yeah.
Find me a rock that's shaped like an oval or an egg. You could probably find them pretty quick. These are very, very specific shapes. And at first glance, someone might say, oh, well, these are just fragmented pieces of a larger structure, and they broke and they eroded that way. And that's absolutely not the case. And I show in the videos many, many examples of why that's not true. So what you were describing was when I got contacted by somebody out of the blue by email who was interested in, they'd come across my channel. Someone recommended the work. Here, just for proof of concept, I went out live and I filmed as I'm walking around the river bottom, and I pulled out, a whole bunch of these things. And then later, as I go back to show the the repeatability of the pattern, and I'm editing the video, I find that there's a whole bunch of others that I didn't spot as I was picking up the ones live. So I add these arrows and yeah. Anyway, that was just me proving to myself I should be able to find a bunch of these if this is true, and I've found them in spades.
And
So-
even when I first met you and I didn't know whether or not, obviously just looking at this, having no horse in the race, thinking to myself, okay, well, at very least you found some sort of a natural process that's repeating itself. Either this is because some mollusks are living in the thing, or
no,
as we found,
not,
as we found out,
these are not being formed by mollusks, and I
that
show
wasn't
exactly
possible.
what that looks like. Yeah, I show the water erosion. I show what salt water and mineral water does to them. I show this one is fractured here, so it's got the isthmus, it's got the opening, just like this one, just like this one, just like this one, right? The more things I add to the list of
it's not just
items.
it's not just the qualities of it, it's debunking the official story. There's no way that this is mollusk.
Right. I mean, yeah. And the thing is, let me just go back to, because I just like that synchronicity list that I showed you with, with the mountain. There's, this is, where is it? I call it the Wilkerson scale. So, I mean, if you look at,
The Wilkerson scale. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah, right there. Okay. So this is a Petrified Hearts evaluation criteria list. And I show all this stuff very, very clearly in videos. And I'm working on a very, very shortened version of just a few minutes so people can recognize this pattern and understand that these are not broken rocks that have chipped off of something and then rolled around in a river bottom and taken on that shape. They're continuous rocks that are not broken. And when you see a break in them, it's very obvious because it shows its flaw. And so this is just listing these different anatomical features. And so the more of those items on that list, right, the less likely I should be able to find a rock like that. So if I said, find me a rock that's shaped like a heart, and it's got indentations at the top where the aorta and the vena cava, which are the two biggest blood vessels in the body, would enter and exit, right? Find me a particular shape which is based on the contraction of the heart and the shape that the heart takes when it goes into contraction, which we call rigor mortis, right? A lot of these have this spiral twisting at the bottom. So they'll have blood vessel openings at the top, and then they'll have this twisting, and then they also have these things called suture lines, which is what you see here. So this is also known as the intraventricular sulcus. When the heart folds together, it creates these lines. And so this is what I'm showing in the videos, is that this is a very, very specific and repeatable pattern that can't be easily explained by water erosion or fragments of larger rocks, because they come in all different sizes, from millimeters up to feet, and they come in all sorts of different colors depending on what's happened after the fact. But I believe there's some kind of a cataclysm that has brought this about. But there's far too many anatomical specificities and see, there's that spiral I was just talking about at the bottom.
Wow.
So,
Every time.
and you can see how many of these, you notice they're not broken. There's no fractures in them. And if we go back to this one
It's like
here,
they popped right out of somebody's rib cage, just right there on the floor.
well, people have asked me, like, was there some kind of a wide scale sacrifice and the organs were removed? And I'm like, no, you don't have to worry about worldwide. Well, maybe you do have to worry about cannibals, actually. Never mind.
But that's unrelated.
I said that, but yeah, it's unrelated, exactly. So anyway, so this is, this is
Just
that
to understand,
isthmus.
Mike, would animal hearts look very different from human hearts, or are these
That's
most
the
likely
thing.
humanoid?
Okay, that's what I go into in the videos, and just like with Hangman's footage, he can show you, but he can't understand it for you, right? When I'm going to get to a little bit more of his footage, and I can place it well. Got
And
too many
going
irons
into
in the
this,
fire
I've
right
actually
now.
seen this guy cut through a fossilized heart, and it's pretty crazy. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. just so people know what you're talking about. That's where is it?
But yeah, I would recommend anybody who has a hard time believing this, just try to prove for a second the official narrative, and then take a day or a week to do that, and you'll realize you'll end up debunking the official narrative, which is exactly what happened to Darwin and anybody else. They're always, you just have to debunk the official story, which is the first step, and then you realize that the official story is more ridiculous than the truth, and then you go for the truth.
Exactly.
And not to say that we have a monopoly on truth either. Just that once you debunk the official narrative, then you're able to at least observe nature. How about that?
So Paridolia, right?
Yeah. So here I went into the river bottom. I'll just skip straight to the end and show you, like, so I recognize this pattern, which I've shown. I've gone out and I've found it live. I've shown that it reoccurs with far too much frequency and specificity to be explained away as simple pareidolia or just a chance occurrence, right? Because the more specificities, the less likely you should be able to find a rock like that. And I'm finding a ton of them, right? So then I went out into the river bottom and I broke them open. This rock is white on the outside and had openings, and you can see this crystalline layering of the chambers of the heart and the muscle, and you can even see the remains of the blood inside.
How many chambers does the heart have now? Because there's also talk about 4 or 5 chambers, Mike.
Well, that changes depending on the species also, but for mammals, for example, it's 4. I think certain fish, perhaps even reptiles, can have like 3 chambers. So that was something I was getting at before. And the reason I can show you, but I can't understand it for you. And the best way to do it is to go. I'm just giving you a very cursory breakdown of what I've found and what I've done. And to see that there's something to it, you have to spend the time to see the footage and see how it compares to anatomy in ways that are not easily explained by just chance occurrences.
Dude cuts open the fossilized hearts of titans. You want to see this? It's good footage.
So check this out. There's that's the papillary muscle, I believe. And what do you see what this thing looks like when it's open?
Wouldn't you know it?
Come on, where is it? You can't hear it right now, but so and also chambers, people imagine this space, but even if you take a still not a live heart but a fleshy heart and you slice it in half, the chambers are very tiny. So it's not like there should be big openings. So this is kind of what you would expect it to do if it was going to petrify, right? And then I'll just go to this last one here. There's that one. So this is all in one afternoon. I went out and I filmed all this, and I got these. So this video is called Broken Hearts Tell Tales. So that was one. That was another chapter. Then I discovered that the heart isn't what we think it is. Have we talked about that? Should I bring that up? Very
Oh,
quickly?
yes, please. That's always
All
a
right.
good one.
This was a huge discovery for me. I knew nothing about. I went to chiropractic college. I studied a ton of anatomy. I knew the heart inside and out when I was, studying it for my tests. And so it wasn't until somebody saw one of my videos, they came in and they made a comment first. The heart is not a rope. I mean, the heart is a rope. And I said, the heart is a rope. I said, okay, that's odd. And then later on, someone linked to this, the helical heart, which is showing the works of this Spanish cardiologist who discovered that the heart fibers actually run spirally, and he theorized things about the heart, and he spent about 20 years dissecting hearts before he discovered the real nature of the heart. So skip ahead here. So if you look at how the heart contracts, it's not that okay. I've got this much better arranged in the videos. This is a longer video, but this is showing him. He's removed the outer fatty portion. He's boiled the heart, and he's bluntly dissecting the heart with his fingers. He's not even using a scalpel. He only needs to use a knife at one point, and that's at the very end when he opens this thing up. This is known as the myocardioventricular band, and
Wow.
he was the discoverer of this. I've found no reference.
Are you kidding me?
In any ancient literature, right? So the heart is a band, and it's one continuous muscle. It's not like the 4-chamber model that we were taught. It's not even a pump. It doesn't push blood. It moves blood through vortexing, and it's got two opposite moving vortexes that are essentially a toroid. The heart is a singularity.
Why have I never seen this? Are you kidding me? Nobody? Like thousands of years? That's like, and this is when people used to tear people apart. Nobody noticed this.
So see those lines? This is when my brain went boom, like I couldn't believe it, because I'd already been collecting the rocks for a year and making videos about them. I did that Broken Heart Tells Tales. I did Giants Hearts, Petrified Organs. These, and if you take them in order, you'll see the progression and you'll see the discoveries. And there's a ton of synchronicities. Like I mentioned, the one with Gorgon's cat being the name of the river. Well, this guy, this cardiologist who taught us more than you could ever imagine about the heart, he lived and worked his entire life on the other side of Mont Go from me, and I had no idea that he even existed or what his discoveries were. But when I saw this, I realized that I'd seen these lines in the rocks. So I went back to the rocks that I already had gathered, and a bunch of them had these lines in exactly the right places. So that was just another very specific correlation. This ties into the works of Victor Schauberger. I talk about that in this video. Essentially the Nikola Tesla of water, would be a simple way to describe the majesty of his knowledge and what he knew about how all fluids are flowing and moving and how to harness that. So that it's a very interesting video, more less for my discoveries, but more for talking about the discoveries of Francisco Torrent Guasp and Victor Schauberger, and how that ties into vortexes and magnetics and so many other topics. And so it started to really, a lot of this synthesizes in ways that it just dovetails perfectly with so many different branches of empirical science.
Happy belated birthday to Julia, and thank you for the super chat. Hi.
So
thank you.
So that's how a vortex works, right? You could see it, and this man used the works of Victor Schauberger and copied basically copied the tip of a tornado
Wow.
and 3D mapped it, and he created this little plastic thing, and putting this in the center at the bottom of one of these cylindrical tanks that holds millions of gallons of fluid, you know, they had a real problem with certain fluids you need to keep agitating them and moving them, otherwise, you know, you'll get contamination of one sort or another. And so that became a very costly endeavor because of the machines, you know, and the mechanisms that they were having to use to circulate all this water. And he created this little thing, which is basically like a frozen tornado, puts it in the bottom of these tanks, and it spins. And for a very, very small amount of money, he can keep everything circulating with that.
Wow.
So that's the same kind of, it's like an implosion technology, right? It's a suction, not a pushing.
Yeah.
And so that's how the heart functions as well. And Guas theorized it. Here you can see one of the ways they proved the spiral form. They took a cow's heart and they blew it up with air, and then they're doing CAT scans as it's deflating. And so this is moving too fast to really appreciate it. We'll slow it down a little bit. But here you can see, you can already, without the other proofs, you can already see these opposite spiraling motions that the heart is doing. See that? As he zooms in, as they zoom in and out, you can
Vortex heart.
You can see those opposite spirals. And so then they took it further. So this is how everything grows. This is getting into sacred geometry and everything that we see in nature. Rudolf Steiner
Careful,
talked a lot about the heart.
Sacred geometry is clearly Paridolia. No, I'm just kidding.
Can you maybe bring up the link, Andreas? I sent. Oh, it's or Mike, because there's also this guy who talks about the Chesterhedron, which also
Frank
maybe you know about
Chester.
this.
Oh yeah,
I
actually,
haven't gone so much into his work, but yeah,
Let
and
me-
I
let
think
me-
that's
I'll quickly
one
jump
of the
there.
reasons these heartstones take on these shapes. They're in contraction at the moment of death and petrification, but also I think the sacred geometry is playing a role, and it would be interesting to 3D map. This is something Andreas could do to 3D capture. You know, you can do it with photographs nowadays, and you just render in 3D the heart, and then you map out the key point, or not the heart, but the stone, map out the key points and see if it follows sacred geometry. That would be an interesting thing
or
to do.
how it does, because everything seems to. Also, someone asked, Keenan asked, wasn't there a movie recently where the Hearthstone was a big thing? And yeah, I think we talked about this, the Bad Boys kids movie. There's a serpent and a fox, and this little good guy, the guinea pig. He's the villain, and he's they have to prove that he's been he stole the Hearthstone, which is this magical Hearthstone from a Titan, and that he can power the civilization and the society. Something that, I mean, it's not as clear as Stellium's talk, but it's something that 6-year-olds can be engaged by.
And of course, Attack on Titan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of references. Clash of the Titans. I saw that as a kid, the cheesy one in the 80s, which is, I still love it. And they did a remake, and then there's the Percy Jackson stuff. And, the whole subject comes up. You got Ents, in Lord of the Rings. You've got Avatar, the top grossing film of all time. And what's the whole, it's like, that world they're on. I think that they're just showing. You were talking about the vapor canopy before, and that archaics references, and that is probably what the world looked like before the pre-flood cataclysm. I think there's, even in mainstream geology, they tell us there's been something like 5 major dyings off, in the last, since the beginning of the Earth, and so
I love how this guy looks like Terry Jones from Monty Python. Keep going.
Yeah, so here he's saying he saw this. This is not MRI. This is an X-ray, I'm not sure how they did this exactly, but it's basically taking multiple X-rays during, I wouldn't want that kind of radiation, but there's a lot of pictures taken in order to get these shots. And this is sped up a bit, but he saw this, and he saw that there was a vortexual flow to the fluid. And that was when he started to have this aha moment that led to him discovering the myocardial-ventricular band, and also getting a more coherent model for how the heart actually works. And he likens it to a piston. And this goes into detail for how, when it contracts, it kind of does the opposite of what you would expect it to. And that's because of the form of the heart and because of how it's actually moving the blood. And here they use positronic emission. And there you can see the spirals in the way the two waves are going outward. This is sped up, but and then yeah, so that was kind of the final straw. They proved it there. And this is what I was talking about before, the way the
Let me address something
actually
that's kind of
pumping.
frustrating me. So mostly unconscious here says they were placed on timeout because I want this guy to credit Mud Fossil University, and then acts like you didn't.
I've already
like,
mentioned him several
you
times.
haven't mentioned it like a dozen times
and
already.
Go to Mud Fossil University, everyone in this chat, if you care about any of this, and start posting comments. Why has he never talked about any of my research? There's
Right.
nobody out there who's
Yeah, let's
done
talk.
more to confirm his theories. Now, I've also discovered other things, and I have my own theories, and I've coined some of my own terms because what he's saying doesn't explain what I'm
Right.
finding. And what
Absolutely.
I'm finding is empirical, and I'm laying it down, and I claim to have a preponderance of evidence for these Hearthstones. And so that gets back to what you were talking about before. But the question
Jesus,
is,
if the
what
guy
is
had
it-
bothered
was
to
it-
mention any of the things, like, so for a couple of years
yeah,
you've been
he's
doing
never mentioned my work, not on the
Yeah.
not on the Titan
And
or the Hearthstones.
And I thought it was kind of funny because I was like, please God, be talking
Yeah.
about Pierre Teilhard Chardin or somebody, not about
People should
Mud
be
Fossil
talking about
University.
Alan from Mud
Yeah.
Flood Was Armageddon just as much as they talk about Roger. But Roger's there like a broken record, waving his DNA analyses and saying essentially the same thing in almost every video year after year. You would think he would want to, collaborate with other people who are confirming the stuff that he's talking about in different ways empirically, but apparently no. And I've had lots of private conversations with him. The water is gone under that bridge, and I'm done praising Roger, because I think it's very suspicious, all the things that he omits and doesn't talk about. He's also extremely close-minded when it comes to cosmology. He's totally I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about it, but I'm sick and tired of people talking about Roger all the time.
Exactly. Much
You know?
respect to anybody who makes videos, but it's a different thing. Your theory is very different, and I wouldn't say that it's based on in any way, except for that you have gone and looked at his work and answered and debunked things about his work. So at least you've actually covered the content, which is what that's the thing.
I've kind of lost interest in his content. I don't go to it. Once in a while. He did a Hearthstone video about when was it? I don't know, a month or two ago, and I got in the comment section because I was a little irritated because it wasn't a very good video. He didn't really cover the subject very well at all, and I've spent a whole lot of time and a whole lot of videos talking about exactly that. That subject. And, that would have been a perfect time to at least give a shout out for, an A for effort or something.
Yeah.
He could say he doesn't agree with my findings. He doesn't agree with but he could applaud what's been done. He could say, hey, this guy's done a ton of work. Here I am with my friend Alex. We got a grinder out. We sawed him open and then polished him. And, so here, we'll just go to the last one. Here's this harp shape that I've talked about so much. I went out in 15 minutes. I got a dozen of these, and I brought them back to his place. Here's the creases, because the blood vessels can be open, they can be creases, they can be indentations, or they can be discolorations. It all depends on the heart and the state that it was in. But these creases are indicative of the blood vessel openings. You have the tapering in that is coming because of the contraction of the heart, and then we sliced it open, and you can't hear the sound, but I've talked about this faceting. This is the front side. There's 3 different facets typically that they have. It doesn't mean there's lines; they're not straight lines, but you can sense a faceting to it, and this ties into the Chesterhedron thing as well. And then yeah, and a curved underside is another thing. So they'll either have a flattened back or they'll have a curved underside. We're not taught to recognize this because we're told it's impossible. This is a very, very easily repeatable phenomenon. And so then check this out. So the outer portion is white, and inside you can make out that there's red here. This side has been polished. I didn't polish the other side because I wanted people to see how it looks there. So there's your quartz crystal. That's consistent with that being either the opening of a chamber or a blood vessel. That's a heck of a lot of specificities in that one stone. I gathered those in a very brief amount of time. I've broken them open, I've sliced them open, and then now getting back to what you were talking about before. Oh wait, let me just finish this thread. So
Every single one is just nuts.
yeah, so you can see that there's a repeatability. This is from that helical hearts video, and I show that they have the suture lines that I discovered because of Torrent Guasp, who lives right here or lived in this neighborhood. I show them from all the different angles. You've got, let's see, here's the channel again. This one was cool. That was sent in by a sub that saw them. Here's so that's the slicing video, and we'll get to that other big topic in a second that you were talking about. So these are the ones that I sent to this laboratory. So I got contacted by email, and you guys there?
Yes.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to other people, much love to all people that try to create content, but people need to try to get the information out. And I don't know, I watched your information slowly trickle into people's consciousness through floodgates, and it's just so frustrating because you've had a lot of this research for a while that people have just not been able to get access to.
Yeah, can you see that one there?
Yeah.
All right. How specific is this? There's your suture, right? There's jump past it. Up here is your blood vessel openings. You've got this telltale harp shape. Now, a heart can be a big roundish blob like an elephant's heart, or it can be long and narrow like a giraffe's heart. And you've got all of these different shapes, and you've got all these different species. So this is one of more than a dozen rocks that I sent off to a laboratory in New Mexico after these people contacted me. And you can see it's very red inside. And these are your blood vessel openings, and it's the faceting front. You can see the white of the pericardium, and under it is red. And then I'm not sure if this one has it so much. There's your suture line where the folds of the heart come back together. So if we go back to that other helical hearts video, that's what I was showing here when he's yeah. So, I mean, essentially the heart is like a complex Mobius strip. That's my take on things. And I think, when you look at red blood cells, they're shaped like toroids. And I think that also this is, at this point here, there's a half twist. So I believe, I theorize that this is like, the heart functions as like a Mobius strip, which is this three-dimensional, one-sided object that you're familiar with that, right? That if you follow it around, this is a triple Mobius strip, but the heart does that half twist. And so if you follow the red around, you'll end up on the other side, and it's just one continuous thing. And it's like a perpetual motion machine, basically. I think that when they give us Iron Man and his superpowers because of that thing that's in his chest that he can't do anything without, I think they're just telling us what we've got inside of ourselves, except it's made by God and it's all natural. So this is that trabecular carne I was talking about, and that would petrify to those bumpy surfaces that you can see when I went in with the endoscopic camera. And this is the shape of a red blood cell. Isn't that interesting? So that ties into the whole magnetic field, and what are cells and what is blood. And there's a whole thing that was recently discovered and that Thomas Cowan has written about called, he's got a book called Cosmic Heart, where he's talking about the fourth stage of water and water being structured. And that's the kind of water that lines our epithelial cells, which is our whole cardiovascular system, our lungs, all of that. And the red blood is going through that, through the floating in the plasma. So I think it's electromagnetic, and it gives off the strongest electromagnetic field of the body, the heart, more so than the brain, as I understand it. So that sums up that thread. Hopefully I'm not boring people.
So no, just as you
I'm
mentioned,
going on and on and on. There's a lot to cover. I mean, when it comes to the channel, there are two real thrusts of the research. One is the mountain, so there's 6 parts to that series. Then I started discovering this with the hearts, and then I did 2 videos. If you're short on time and you want to get an overview, you're kind of getting that here anyway. But this video, Petrified Titans and Organs, part 1 and 2, I did as just summary videos. I've done a lot of interviews where I've covered different aspects of the research in a lot more detail. So this is when I sent these stones off, and this was after I got the response back from them. I had to go through 90 minutes worth of recorded phone conversations and presented evidence, supposed evidence, on the part of the guys who were involved with and owned the lab. And so in order to really rebut that, the claims that they made about these stones, it took 3 hours to go through. But it's a very, very interesting journey as far as looking at the scientific method, applying it, and applying it to things that people have already decided are impossible or outlandish or ridiculous, that we shouldn't think about, and see what you come up with. And would you call this Paridolia? Is this or is this actually rational observation of empirical evidence, where you're looking at it through different eyes from what we've been told? How could this possibly be right? How could all of these tens of thousands of geologists for years and years have gotten such fundamental basic things wrong? How is that? How could that be possible? Well, it's very simple. If you're blinded by a paradigm, then you're paradigm blind, and you're not going to see something that's right in front of your eyes, just like all of us, because we've never been taught that something like an organ can have a front or a back. I mean, a rock can have a front or a back, because if you look at how the heart sits in the body, the orientation is the same for the species. So even though things change shape, we're going to find all kinds of variations, but we're going to find a whole lot of very, very specific things that reoccur over and over again if this is actually a phenomenon. They'll just say I'm cherry picking. They'll say I've got the Dunning-Kruger effect, where I think I know a bit about something, and I've misled myself into thinking that my Paridolia is actually reality. And so that's why I sent these rocks off to the laboratory. We'll come back.
Well, you know what you say. Anything you say is glue, and anything I say, I'm rubber, you're glue.
I'm rubber, you're glue.
That's how
it
goes.
Bounces off me and sticks to you.
Right? That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Because they didn't call me names. They never called me stupid. In fact, they praised my intelligence, and they admired, what I was saying, but they were saying he's completely wrong, and these are all the reasons. And that's why it took 3 hours to go through this. And I showed that every single thing they said is either just wrong flat out or potentially wrong. And the things that they said about my stuff don't match the research I presented at all.
Right.
And they never addressed any aspect of the research. And they gave me no data. I got no numbers. I got no nothing from these guys other than opinions. And they had the gall to do this thing. Let's see if I can find it quick while that's running. Let's see.
Mike,
Go
it's
ahead
kind of
and chime in.
sympathetic you're being so hard on yourself, but I just want to say anybody looking at this with an open mind can clearly see there's at least a lot worth researching more. And when you then get these type of answers from supposed experts that don't even relate to your actual findings, I mean, you know what's up, right? I mean, I hope
Right.
everyone listening too, that at least there's something to look at. And anyone else,
Yeah.
disprove
Do you
it
think
yourself.
maybe some information is being hidden from us, like big information?
Yeah,
Like
who founded your university?
who
Who
might
taught you this
benefit?
geology? Who bought the professorship? It's very simple.
If they're mining titans and we don't even believe titans exist, who's going to know where to go looking for the really valuable stuff?
Little things like that.
And
Yeah.
also here, Mike, what's your impression actually? Why did they expend so much money or research for this particular cave? Because you said it's an unusual type of detail they went into with the 3D mapping.
And the censorship.
Someone maybe knew about this and was
Right.
sending them. So yeah.
So if you look here, this is small scale, and these are just as beautiful and detailed as the big ones. And I've gone in on the live stream. I got a 1000x microscope, and I get up right next to this, and I show that they look like fascia and flesh under a 1000x microscope. They can be bone white, and you think it's just going to look white, and you get in there, and it's more than white. And you can see this one, it's moved. It's upside down. You notice the shape? Notice the indentation, right? These have indentations always on the top and not on the bottom. And even the small ones, many of them, if you look at them from the bottom, you can see the twisting. And I believe that's because when the petrification happened, it happened fast. The rest of the body was destroyed in the process. Now, it's not just hearts. People ask me that question all the time. It's also kidneys. It's also, all of the different stones that the body creates, gallstones. I could literally go on and on for 6 hours straight on this. I don't know how long have we been going? And do people want to keep going?
In, but we can go a little bit. Let's go a little bit deeper, a little bit into the kidney thing, and then we can, wherever you're comfortable.
I'm going to do a video on kidneys, but so this is just laying out all of these rocks, because I actually ended up meeting the son of Francisco Torrent Guasp, the cardiologist, because I was so blown away by the coincidence that there was this correlation between the discoveries I was making and what I learned about the heart, which absolutely blew my mind. And then that caused me to discover something I hadn't noticed in the stones that I'd already gathered. You can see it here. Here you can see the remains of the blood vessels in many of them. Those are fractal. That's not just water erosion. I show the differences between them. And it just goes on and on. So anyway, here's the one that's, look at this thing. Come on, tell me, people. If you're still along for this and you've been watching the whole thing and you're skeptical, look at this stone.
How many coincidences before mathematically impossible?
And that's a question I ask a lot in my videos, because there's two kinds of scientific evidence, right? There's scientific evidence. Look at that. There's your aortal opening. That has a chamber. By the way, I took 4 of these for CAT scans, and I had a cardiologist that was going to interpret them for me, who was totally, he was like totally open to what I was showing. And he's like, dude, I'm a cardiologist, and I see what you're seeing there. You're onto something. I don't know anything about geology, but this can't be chance. And I told you about the statistician. There's also a guy who reached out to me who his dog passed away, and he burned his dog on a pyre, and he built this pyre, and it was like 8 feet long, 6 feet tall, and 4 feet wide, of like the hardest oak. And this burns at an incredibly hot temperature. And he didn't know, he hadn't seen my videos at the time that he did this, but when all was said and done, the wood burned for 36 hours before it extinguished itself. Dang. And it was all ash, and you could clearly see the difference between the ash and the ash of the body and the ash of the wood. And so he went up and he poured some water on the ashes just to see what would happen, and exposed the heart. And he said the heart was very, very tough. And so in just that short amount of time, it had annihilated the rest of the body. And this gets back to the theory that I never talked about. I call it boiled egg theory. So if you think about, let's see, biogeology, hearts. I'm going to show a gruesome photo. So if you don't like fleshy stuff turn away. But this is the chest chamber. The lungs have been removed, and this is called the pleura. This is a very, very fatty sac that holds all of the fluid and all of the organs, and then the organs are anchored and floating in fluid. And each of the organs is wrapped in its own fatty sac. This is called the pericardium in the heart. Notice that it's turned to the side, and here's that fatty portion that was on that very first rock I was showing. This is called the atrium. This is the ventricle. There's your blood vessels coming out. And that's all anchoring in so that it doesn't move around when we're jumping and doing jumping jacks and whatnot. And so this is the diaphragm, and then the intestines are below that. I've got a whole bunch of theories about the intestines, but I won't go into those right now. But anyway, so if you just think of the chest cavity, you would think I'd find a lot of lungs, but lungs are extremely porous and they're designed to hold air. So I think lungs are just destroyed in the process. But when it gets back to things like gallstones, kidney stones, you'd be amazed at what those look like. And there's all kinds of examples of stones that look exactly like that. And I can show that real quick.
At the user Scripps, who's asking who this is not tendon balls. No, this is Stellium7.
So here's an example of an actual petrified brain. Notice how it's all crystalline. This is a whale brain. How it petrified, I have no idea, but that's, a known example. These are, looking at different kinds of brain shapes, and you would expect these to break off into different sizes. Well, the brain is primarily fat, and so fat crystallizes to quartz in my biogeology theory. And the hotter it is, I think that there's a lot of examples of quartz flow where it's not like all lined up like tissue, but it actually looks like it melted. Here's another example of a petrified brain, and you can see it's totally quartz inside. So you raise that heat even more, this is going to be like melted butter. And there's the brain halves, right? This is looking from the middle out, and this is what it would look like. And right there is the corpus callosum. This is where the main blood flow is in the brain. And this is, they're claiming in mainstream geology that this is very likely vitrified brain, so that it's literally melted. So they're telling us in mainstream geology that the brain can turn to glass.
And melts. Yeah, that's also fun.
Yeah, all the different brain shapes. So maybe opals. These different precious kinds of stones, agates. Maybe these are actually petrified flesh of different types, right? So this is a geode. Geode. So these are agates. This could vary. Much of this is from the great trees, and I'm totally convinced of that from Hangman's work. This could be biogeological as far as like bodies, but I think this is more likely tree when you see this kind of thing. This is the cerebellum, the little brain, and these are gall or kidney stones. I can't remember which, but notice how they grow like rings of a tree. So and like a gallbladder can have a ton of those. These are actual stones that are produced by the body. These are kidney. This looks like brain to me, but these are different kinds of kidney or gallstone.
That is so brainy.
They can be very big. This is a gallstone. These are gallstones. You can see how many can be in a gallbladder. I've got another picture where there's like a thousand in there. So if it's already a stone and the body is destroyed, then boom, there's all of your little tiny stones of all kinds of different shapes and sizes, all there being produced by the body. Yeah, there's another one here. There's so there's your rocks on the beach, right? So if the body can grow stones, then it's already a stone, and it'll stay a stone if the rest of the flesh is destroyed in one way or another. So yeah, it's kind of brain splat stuff. A lot of rocks look like either kidneys or spleens. Spleens are very simple. It's just like this kind of a shape, and then the blood vessels go in and out. So you might see a rock and it might have a line there or something. It's not going to be so complex, right? So if I went around talking about kidneys or rocks that I'd found and saying, hey, this is a petrified kidney, people are going to look at me like I'm nuts. But that's why I focused on the hearts, because I recognize there's so much biological specificity there in the stones that you want to focus on And ironically, those are the easiest to spot because they're so distinct from the others. This is an example of a mammoth that's encased in mud there. Yeah, so those are examples of petrified brains from Bruni, I believe, the guy in Italy that we were talking about at the beginning. That's a testicle. Some people like to talk about petrified testicles. It takes balls.
Tendon balls, right?
Yeah, tendon balls is a real big one from who. He thinks everything's a tendon ball. He thinks the moon's a tendon ball. How ridiculous is that idea? Yeah, it's just a big tendon ball there floating outside of the earth. I'm sorry, but it's ridiculous, Roger. If you happen to be listening, he used to comment on my stuff, but I think we've parted ways now.
You got sassy.
These are geodes, right?
Yeah.
Like gallstones, geodes, gallstones. And I think this is tree, and I don't know what that is. There's so many different examples. The mineral kingdom is so amazing and rich, and what the body creates is fantastic. People don't understand that we can actually create and synthesize materials in our bodies. It's called biological transmutation. It's considered a conspiracy theory, but it's a fact. All you have to do is think about a chicken, right? A chicken lays an egg every day. And that gets me back to boiled egg theory. I'll finally finish that. But chicken lays an egg every day. And the calcium that's in that shell is greater than the amount of calcium that is consumed by the chicken throughout the course of the day as it's eating its grain. So that tells you that a chicken is making calcium. That shouldn't be possible because like all the periodic table is born in the hearts of suns, right? And then supernovas outward. And if it's not born there, it's born in the center of planets through some kind of nuclear fusion because of all the gravitational pull. Isn't that the mainstream model for that sort of thing?
It's like that old joke, the two brothers, and one guy's like, my brother, he's so crazy. He thinks he's a chicken. And it's like, well, why don't you get away from him or like, turn him in or get him get him help? It's like, well, what could I do? I need the eggs,
Right. I love it. Yeah.
Or it's all made in your heart.
So going back to this, now if you've been skeptical the whole time, ask yourself how far-fetched this theory really is, because we've got all kinds of examples of cataclysmic destruction around the world, whether it's flooding and high mineral content waters like Mother Shipton's cave can start to petrify things in a matter of months because the mineral water is so hot. There's so many minerals in that water, it encases things and they start to harden and harden. Lake Natron is another example of that, where they've got these different creatures. They fall into a lake and they can't get out because they die because there's so much mineral content there. They don't survive, and then they start to turn to stone. So fast petrification does happen in a whole variety of different ways. We've talked about electrical, mineral, heat. This is my theory, boiled egg theory, when it comes to the organs. So the pleura is going to protect the heart from the outer portions, the muscle. The long bones are all going to be destroyed. If you think about what happens to bone inside of a crock pot, if it's a mud flood, that mud is hot. If it's a lava flow or whatever, it's gonna start to destroy the outer portions of the body. It's going to eat away at the muscle, for example. And then as it starts to heat up, the bones, the long bones, the pelvis, the arms, legs, the head, that's all going to become like bone broth, right? If you put bone into a crock pot with low heat and pressure, it's going to turn to sponge within hours, right? And then it turns to a gelatinous substance. If you keep it overnight, it turns to broth, right? You can drink bone in the end. So that's what would happen to the long bones. That's why I'm finding organs outside the body, because as that process is happening, I believe that it's causing this massive baking and boiling of the organs inside the pleura, inside the chest cavity. And boiled egg theory is just that. Think about what happens to an egg when it's in the heart, it's in the water. After 6 to 12 minutes, it's already hardening. And if you cook that egg more and more, it's just going to get harder and harder. So people are like, well, reproduce this, do this. And I'm like, that's not my area of expertise. Somebody else who's got chemistry background, and access to hearts, if they want to try and petrify something, go right ahead, but I'm not going to do it. I've been a vegetarian my whole life, and I'm not going to handle these. I have a friend who wants me to cut into him, and I'm not. I'll watch him do it, but I'm not doing it. All right. So I think, and the blood vessels, these are hollow, so these are going to get destroyed as well. And so the heart either hardens all the way to stone or on its way to stone, and then the perimineralization process or mud flood or whatever completes the process. That's boiled egg theory in a nutshell, tied into bone broth theory. And then if you think about this is that, look at this here. See that? Look at that. That's very specific. Right here is your coronary sulcus. The coronary artery, that's the one everyone, usually dies of when the heart goes in, a heart attack, because that one gets blocked, because that's the artery that supplies the heart. So then the heart asphyxiates, right? Because of the blockage in the coronary artery, and the heart is sending the blood to the rest. So that is your coronary sulcus.
There it is again.
And then on the back side, so you have the coronary artery, you have on the back side, you have the aorta, you have the two here, you have the trabecular carne, you have the isthmus. I mean, it's literally 25 anatomical correlations. So
freaking uncanny.
What are the odds, right?
Yeah.
There's your
and how many?
And there's your vena cava.
There's another one.
And here you can see how clear the pericardium is, and this is actually crystalline. This is quartz, right? You don't see that it's quartz on the other side, but you really can see it here with the naked eye. And I've gone in with microscopes and looked at these, and this is where the insertions would have attached it to the body.
I mean, it's crazy how many of these are ejected. So why do you think that? Do you find like rib cages or anything like that around these, or why is it so often?
I think the ribs probably are disintegrated as well, and when if you think about if the intestines were to petrify, that would explain a whole lot of rock that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? You have these whole swaths of like, what the hell happened here? How could that be that way? That doesn't make any sense with metamorphic rock or sedimentary layering, but it sure might make sense if you think about it originally as a. You
ever see a whale? You ever see a whale on
the lab? They came back and said they don't resemble hearts in any way. They did a little survey. This was you want to see the scientific evidence I got? I've got to pull it up.
Have you ever seen a whale on the beach dead and explode? You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of this. I haven't witnessed it.
So
I haven't seen pictures, and I don't really want to.
Oh, that's too bad, because I could show you some nuts stuff.
No, but go ahead. Yeah, I can handle it.
Yeah.
Now remember, I'm well aware of what
That's a whale exploding.
Paridolia,
That's a whale exploding right now.
Yeah, and
that's what happens.
I wonder what Roger Spur would think of this one, for example.
If you open a whale, they have to often do this when they're beached, because they start to ferment and then they explode otherwise, and then there'll be giant chunks of whale that shoot everywhere. So they'll even sometimes just blow up a whale. But if you just pop it open, it'll explode into your face like horrible. So the idea, here's a exploding whale, right? So it's eventually, when the rotting corpse explodes, then it's going to shoot out every direction, intestines, and it's going to tear apart. And so the idea,
okay.
So
this explains a lot of Japanese anime, might I add.
Yeah, that's true.
Whoa, that's just bizarre. Why does that happen?
Because the insides of it are fermenting, and it expands, and then it pops.
Right. And you brought this up because of what I was saying about the intestines. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not just intestines, but also shattered bones and heart stones just strewn about. I mean, it doesn't actually take much more than something dying of natural causes, even, for it to be strewn about.
Right. I mean, just look at all that in that last picture you showed. All that stuff that was there was just like, it was nuts. So there, when you see some of these areas geologically, so this gets back to the main point I wanted to make was I hadn't even planned really on talking about my own work much at all tonight, because what I think is so important. Oh my God.
That's so much whale. And they're trying to make it easier. Like they're like, well, let's get it done now. So at least it just
People had no idea what they were in for watching.
that was a
this
lot
stream
of
tonight.
whale. Sorry.
Oh man.
On loop was a bit much. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me show my. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, yeah, I can go back here.
So
into the oblivion.
Yes. Stop screen. Present. Share screen, and then I want to share my screen, and then I'm going to share system audio as well, and then
Evil Fandango says wet t-shirt contest ruined. Yeah, don't enjoy the whale explosion. I get it, but it could happen.
Somebody might think this is hippo, but
oh my god, what?
That's the original. Right.
Dude.
So like this is the original. So you got to use discernment. I did a 4-hour live stream on the subject of Paridolia, discernment, Dunning-Kruger effect, all of these things. And the subtitle was and truth or discernment and intellectual honesty, because there's a whole lot of people talking about stuff out there that have not looked into it, and they're making claims, and they're making, these, this alternative research community look really stupid when people look at stuff, because they're not, it's like with the Titan thing, is this a face? Is there a face there?
Oh,
there's
nice.
a face. There's a face in counter space, but what's going on there? This is, to me, this is biogeology is what we're looking at in one way or another. Maybe not all of it. Some of it is probably mining waste. I think Mike Ferreira has done a lot of great work there. I praise him. And then there's the whole question of volcanoes. What are volcanoes anyway? That's, Brittany likes to get into that subject. Like, what if they're the cinder cones are the remains of, giant, mining waste? What if it's ancient tech that's down there? What if it's Titan, Titans they're mining? What if it's the avatar trees that they're mining out the root systems of the trees? I think you get all these people that start arguing with each other about, this, that, or the other thing, and calling each other shills. And, there's a lot of factions out there, and you got the Melted Buildings crew, and you got the big tree people, and you got the Titans, and you got, but I think in the end, it's probably all of the above. There's some truth to all of it, but none of it is applicable all the time. And people just run with their pet theory, and they think that explains everything. And I think it doesn't. It's way more complex than that. But the number of these stones that I found and the specificity is just off the chart. And it's, in all shapes and sizes. And, so I think that's enough for the Hearthstones for now. But going to this gentleman's work, his name is Mike as well, and he gets down, boots on the ground like nobody else, and he shows it in all of its manifestations. And there is quartz. The quartz is the sap, and it's so obvious when you see his footage that the sap is emerging between the layers. This is not sedimentary layering. It's growing and curving in every direction you can imagine. And it's breaking down in a fractal fashion, and you can see it small as something you can hold between your fingers or in the palm of your hand. And you can see it up like that chunk there is the size of a city building, right? And it's all consistent, and it all matches every aspect of the trees. This is undeniable proof when you see it for what it is. And he's got hundreds of hours of footage. And this is not even, this is just a little bit of it. And you can see the grain in it right there. You can see the color of the wood is still present oftentimes. And it breaks when it's big like this, it breaks in all the different sizes, and look at this. This is these layers, like pages of a book, and just filled with quartz. That is your sap. And the sap can be any color. It can be bone white. See the grain? That's stone. It's wood. It's petrified wood. And he shows it in every way you can possibly imagine. And if you watch 10 or 20 hours of his footage, and you go in as the biggest skeptic, You come back to me and tell me after that footage that you don't think that this is giant tree, and I'd be surprised. Professor Dave, on the other hand, he would know his head from his rear end.
Eugenie posted the link also for Hangman 1128, also named Mike.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I think it's the most, to me, it's the most important channel on YouTube right now. And the reason I say that is because if you can prove to yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt, based on empirical evidence, that the avatar gigantic trees once existed, and you have no doubt, and you see the stumps for what they are, you see the fragmented tall mountains for what they are, and you see his footage for what it is, then you're a long way to understanding that just about everything they're telling us about our realm is a fabrication, an inversion, a distortion, in one way or another. You can see all the different ways the sap manifests. That's going to be different from tree to tree. He's identified a number of different trees. Most of his footage has to do with cedar trees, and it matches perfectly. And he shows it side by side with the small version of the trees. So, and you can see just all of the different ways in which this manifests. And there's no way in heck that this is sedimentary layering, that this is live creatures that just crush down and in all this curvy fashion, and you get this fractal quality. There's just no way. So, yeah. And once you understand that this is real, then my stuff seems a whole lot less far-fetched. Because,
well, that was a good plug for his channel, but what about yours? Let's go check out Mike's channel. Pull us up to the Stellium7 channel again so people can get subscribed.
I feel like I've been plugging it all night. So,
but it's good because we're, this has been some great information, and I want to make sure everyone is subscribed to your channel. Get yourself up.
I posted in chat. Andreas, just make sure to add it to the description. I'll send you some links.
Great. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite little clips. Take a look at this. This is just next level. Tell me that doesn't look like wood. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
All right. Chunks of wood, just like a wood chip pile, right? It's just sitting there. But wait till you see what he shows next. Okay. Even that is the same thing. It's just bigger. And look at this. Tell me that isn't wood. You can see all of the layers. You can see parts of it that are still the exact same color. It breaks off in all the same fashion. It's just
wow.
It's mind-numbing.
What are they saying? This is not supposed to. Is anyone arguing this?
This is like right by Garden of the Gods. This is like Flatirons and I think South Dakota. This is Garden of the Gods. All of these national parks. This is
right.
This is what people are hiking around. And because we're never taught that this is even a remote possibility, it's fed to us in fiction, in movies like Avatar, and you'd have to be an idiot to think that trees that were 10 miles wide at the base once existed, right? But here it is. There it is, right there for you to see. This is going to be like the far, edge. So that, they kind of, they deteriorate here, and then you'll have an outer ring, and those will be the parts that's like Garden of the Gods and Flatirons that, and they're sticking up at different angles. Let me just show you just a few pictures here that are just phenomenal of the trees. These are screenshots, some of them from his work also. But not all of these are his. So this is cedar here, and when you get up, it's all the way down to the smallest level. It's the exact same thing. These are layers, and notice the angle. So this is where the trunk would have started to come and slope upward, and then the root systems at the bottom are parallel. So that's going to give you all of your sedimentary layering going in all of these different directions, and your canyons. So, tell me that if that doesn't look like wood to you, what about this?
So this is amazing, the splintering thing. So we've seen these ones that look like they're cut right across, and some of these other ones that look like they're snapped and we've seen how that can happen to trees from volcanoes.
So that involved like what kind of force would snap something that big?
Right? Yeah.
Right? And snap it
A
like a
lot.
toothpick, right? We see the same thing when you look at Mount St. Helens. You see all these tree stumps, all different sizes, looking exactly the same thing. And they're just, fragmented, broken pieces of what they once were. Here you see the lines of sap, right? They're going with the grains of the wood. So the sap is transporting nutrients throughout the whole system, right? It's the blood of the tree. Tell me that isn't wood.
Brutal.
Come on. All right. This is now here you see this is all part of the same piece, and this would go around in a ring in one direction or the other, right? And loop back around. And maybe most of it is gone, and this is all that remains. Like he's got some amazing footage on the ground. These are the flat irons. And he might not agree with everything I said, and I don't mean to misrepresent his work in any way. If I have nothing but praise for it. In fact, I'm more confident about his findings and his work than I am about my own, and I'm being totally honest about that. So this is just, to me, self-evident. Oh, but there's no. Oh, that gets back to the point I wanted to make before about the scientific method. There, you've got a lot of different ways to arrive at knowledge and evidence and proof, right? Well, the scientific method is very, very narrow when it involves some kind of an experiment where you're manipulating a variable and you can change the outcome of something, right? We can't do that. These things are already there. We can't create an avatar tree, then create a cataclysm in order to destroy it and find a way to petrify it to prove the theory, right? Good luck. You can't do that kind of stuff. So you have to look at things and you have to draw, you have to compare them to other things, and you have to look at correlations. And when you find that there's a whole lot of stuff that adds up, look at this. How many times have you seen like a fallen tree that looks like that and is breaking down?
Wow. Well, more and more now that you've been showing them.
Yeah. So I just want to drive the point home.
It's uncanny, and it's crazy. I see. So it's interesting how you say you have even more faith in it, because obviously that's a good thing to be that humble about your work. Oh, your audio is playing in that video.
Sorry.
For some reason.
Yeah, I turned that on before, but not because I wanted to play this specific video. But let's see. Yeah, so I've shown that. And I mean, he's got, like I said, hundreds of hours of footage, but he's got some great short videos. This one is Garden of the Gods. This is what we were just talking about. And, he's showing all the different ways in which the grain breaks down. He's showing you the different scale. And a lot of times that scale, like this is a regular tree, right? There's the log, but he'll tilt the camera up and you'll find the exact same thing in the exact same colors and the exact same shapes. And, I don't for a moment believe that that's coincidence. And then he's got some really high quality camera footage as well. He's filmed in HD. So right now we're streaming, so it's 720p. This is why I encourage you to go to his channel, because at HD you can see the grain and the detail. It comes to life, and every different way in which the tree manifests, you can find examples of that in. And this is that Madagascar stuff. So there's just so much evidence that seems to be a hell of a lot more than Paridolia, in my opinion.
Right.
And then one last thing, you were saying, plug the channel.
Yeah, because guys, this is research that someone's doing without you're not pushing anything. You're actually asking these questions, and this is you've proved how humble you are in your research. I think you deserve to be slightly more confident about some of the things that you've proven.
Well, I do suffer from Dunning-Kruger effect in the sense that I've never studied geology formally. I'm not even interested in studying it so much, because I'm if there's any truth to what I've shown, then major portions of geology are wrong. So I'm more interested in going in the direction of physics and learning from other people who, I've got a couple interviews with a PhD in molecular chemistry, Lenny Time, on my channel, and he's totally on board with this, and he's talking about different ways in which this could happen, but he's looking at it on a atomic level and a physics level that I can't even begin to do because I have no training in that. So yeah, I've Dunning
But
Kruger definitely.
I do know some geologists, and they are more and more interested in your work, and have already, there's always been an interest in the idea of Chardinian noospheric geobioscience, that there's some sort of a relationship there already. So your work is very important, and you do have an education in anatomy and in a lot of things, actually. But specifically,
I have a wide background. I'm more of a jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to a lot of things, really. Yeah. So this is. Let me just. There was one last important thing I wanted to bring up that was short. Also, what was it? Oh yeah, I just wanted to show, the research that I got back from these guys, and this is what I made the video about, called Paradigm Crushed. It's a long video, but it's worth it, and you'll see what happens when somebody like me, who doesn't really have a horse in the race. People have accused me of doing this to make money and whatnot, and trust me, this is not a way to make money. This is a way to lose money, a lot of money, because of the amount of time it takes. This was a research chat with Rodrigo Ferrari, a friend he's a PhD in anthropology. So we had a long discussion about these things, and he's very, very educated and knowledgeable. This is the Paradigm Crushed video that is all about what happened after I sent these stones. So I made a video showing the stones I was sending them, displaying them in 360, so people could see what I sent, talking about why they matched the theories. They completely ignored the theories and just they towed the line in every way, shape, and form with the mainstream narrative. And the last part I want to show you was the evidence that I got back, or the let's see. No, it's not that one. Let me find it. It's a PDF. Sorry. Can't find it.
I don't get this. I want to understand. Andrelphus, which is a cool name because it's like half Andreas and half dolphin, says he's the spirit of sacred geometry and peacocks. Whom? Maybe I missed.
Andrelphus.
Andrelphus.
Yeah. So this was the. This is an example of what I was expecting to get back, like an actual physics lab report. I was hoping they were going to do spectroscopy, where they could have given me a molecular breakdown by percentage of the different materials that were in the samples that I sent. And I didn't get that. What I got was this. So the above
propaganda.
The image above is of a cobble sent to the Orenda lab from Spain as an experiment. 100 people were asked what it looked like. They were asked. So first of all, he's calling this an experiment.
What the hell?
Right.
There was all these maps.
Right. They were asked before any information was offered about it. The question was asked, what does this rock look like? Or what does it remind you of? Now, keep in mind, this is a highly reputable lab. And I go into his background and what he's known for. And I get this. It looks like a skull. Okay, maybe. It looks like a rock. Okay, that's the majority. It looks like a cloud. It looks like a smiling turtle head. Now, that's very specific, right? A smiling turtle head? 8 people are going to come up with that one? Bullshit.
But even just giving this as an answer option shows that they just try to discredit whatever you're doing there. I mean, what is this?
Ghosts? Right? I can understand. Yeah, all right, whatever. But sad puppy face. Once again, very specific. 7 people said that. A white monkey's head, 3. 12 said it looked like a heart. So here.
You know what?
I didn't really...
Yeah. I didn't analyze this deep enough, but the more I read it, the more it seems like Shakespearean. Eye of newt, toe of sad puppy face, white monkey's head. These are some pretty weird symbology that they've chosen.
This is kind of interesting too. People who are familiar with that number. or
Oh yeah.
the logo. The
What?
logo is
Really?
interesting.
322? Oh boy. In Santa Fe, New
logo?
Mexico.
Oh yeah, the logo. I was looking at it before, but it's obvious. Look at the logo. Yeah.
Jeez, that's
So
terrifying.
anyway, so
Space power.
And what's
those
his
that said
last
it looked
name?
like a heart
Eon.
were
Sorry, but just
Aeon.
interesting.
Those that said it looked like a heart were then asked if it looked like a heart or it looked like a heart symbol. 10 said it looked like a heart symbol. Okay, I can buy that. And there he goes into where I've made my grave error, right? The doctrine of signatures. Indigenous peoples often rely on the doctrine of signatures or symbols to find useful items for ceremony, for healing, for practical purposes. If it looks like a heart, then it is good for the heart. An area found filled with cobbles that look like hearts would become a sacred place, whether they were dissected hearts, fossilized hearts, or simply cobbles, like cobblestones, that reminded one of hearts. Such is the human experience. It should not be confused with science, and nor should pseudoscience be employed for truthful explanations. All human experience should be honored, and a reasonable acceptance should follow. But even so, people should be able to discern reasonable and scientific explanations from all others.
I'm surprised it didn't crash you in a bus or a plane crash or something. I mean, like that. I mean, the
Hey,
way that they just
Please don't
blacklisted
give me
you.
any ideas.
Oh my god.
Yeah, well, I mean, the eye and the ear have been blocked out. The channel grew to 17,000 really, really quickly, and then it's taken like 2.5 years, despite a ton of content, to get another 2,000 or 3,000 subs. So maybe maybe they just rendered me insignificant, or But I'm telling you, it's a great video to watch, and everything's backed up to Odyssey. Some things are on Rumble, some things are on BitChute. But download this stuff because this is empirical evidence that you can look at and you can follow yourself. Download Hangman stuff. Put up mirrors. You're welcome to mirror any of my videos if you like. I'm perfectly okay with that. And I just want to talk about something because I've been mocked. You can go. Simon Dan did a video on me as well, and that was seen by 250,000 people. And boy, did I get a lot of nasty comments from that one. And you should see how they addressed my evidence and whether they addressed any of it or if they just parroted mainstream narratives and casted insults in my direction. What did you say, Andreas?
Oh, I just wanted to see the paper you sent in to the Aeon guy. Like again, just so people.
I didn't send a paper. I sent. I just sent the rocks. And I sent a little, thank you letter for doing it.
I was looking at the graphs over there, and I was thinking that they were, in
the video, the Paradigm Crush video, I show all of the correspondence. Everything's dated, all of the times, all of the evidence. I show every single thing that they're talking about. I'm showing it live as they're talking about different terms. You don't have to know about geology to understand what happened when it came to how everything went down. You really don't. You don't have to be an expert. I'm not saying I'm right about my conclusions, but if you look at how they dealt with the stuff and how it went down and the kind of information and data I got back, you ask yourself if they were honoring this, if they addressed any aspect of how I was honoring this and the different data that I had presented and the findings, they didn't address any of them. So I made observations. I thought of interesting questions. I formulated a hypothesis. I developed testable predictions. I went out into the field. I found out that it was very repeatable. I broke them open. I sliced them. I polished them. I used microscopes on them. I sent them to a laboratory. I mean, this is all after developing predictions. And then here's another thing. I call it proof of concept when it comes to the Hearthstone thing. I've found rocks that I've seen only a portion of the rock, and I've recognized a shape, and I've predicted the way the rest of the rock was going to look, and then I've pulled the rock out, and it looks that way. Right? I shouldn't be able to predict, with a lot of specificity.
Further, we've climbed into rocks that you predicted, and we should be dead if it wasn't the actual cavity,
Right. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Why would I be dead?
Oh, I mean, well, it's just theoretically, like to as we were climbing into an eye socket of a giant titan and
we'd
finding
be
our
crushed
way.
by the eyelid. He'd be like a gnat going into your eye. He'd be like rubbing us out, going, "Damn it, another one of those things."
And you were saying, hey, in this small space here, theoretically, if it was a giant titan, or some sort of an animal that had like a chest cavity or some sort of a sinus cavity that you could go into, then there would be space there. But otherwise, if it were just a regular mountain, most likely we would just get stuck somewhere. And but luckily, here we are, cavity.
So refine, alter, expand, or reject your hypothesis, right? This is a crucial part because this is a feedback loop until you're able to gather predictions that allow you to develop general theories, and it becomes predictable and it's consistent with what you're finding in nature. It's based on empirical evidence, not mathematical formulas, and not theoretical musings about hundreds of millions of years. So anyway. It's well worth the time from a education standpoint. For my degree, just to show one last thing, because you compare Frank Aon's report to this is what a lab report should look like, and I showed that, and then I'll go back to my master's thesis.
Who made this other report? Just to be clear on that.
It's just a random sample. I searched for PDF file sample laboratory report, and I got that.
And he basically sent you
back
back
that's exactly what I was expecting, right?
But he sent you back this philosophical statement. Like I mean, that's it's so obvious.
Right. Yeah. And let me just show one last thing to contrast, because people who might be thinking I'm off my rocker and these are stupid ideas and I've wasted a whole lot of time to try and convince people of something that is just a harebrained idea. They need to review the evidence. They need to see what I've said. They need to realize that I've already addressed in my own videos from the very first video all of these different criticisms that have been levied against me and why I don't think they're accurate. And those arguments have not been addressed. And that's what you would call steel manning instead of straw manning, where you take the weakest argument, you attack that to make it look stupid, then you mock it, and then you hand wave dismiss it as irrelevant, and why should we bother to even think about it? As opposed to the opposite, which is you actually go into the data and you debunk it by showing how it's incorrect what's being said is, the case. So I'm not sure if I said that very eloquently, but you get the idea. And
absolutely.
And I'm just going to go to one thing here, which is, here we go. This was my master's thesis, and it's in Swedish. I went to college for chiropractic in Sweden. Spinal manipulation technique and its effects on visceral disease. Very complicated subject that we wish we hadn't picked afterwards. But this was a 40-page document. We had to have an introduction to define the problem area, the goal of the research. We had to have a method in this case, our method was a literature study, and we had to present a model. And so this would be your abstract and your problem area, discussing the problem in general, then diving into the goal and the method. This was the model that we were working from. And then you have the body of the text and all of the analysis, and you have to have footnotes for everything. And you can't just go to Wikipedia for this stuff. You actually need to read the research. So I was in Karolinska Institute, which is the top medical college in Sweden, and I read probably hundreds of different studies. They're all in here. These are actual peer-reviewed studies that I was able to access for free because my school had access to the library at this medical college. And we went into every single one of these, and this is what we're making our paper from. And there's 5 pages of just the bibliography. So obviously they were doing the analysis for free on the stones. So stop sharing there. So I was thankful that they were doing that, and you can see how it went, and you can see how things changed when I started to ask uncomfortable questions, and people find it to be a very interesting journey. That video.
This is what they were like. No, I won't show it again.
It's worth the time, even if I'm wrong about everything, because it's such a wonder. Sorry, what did you show?
No, the whale thing. Don't worry about it.
Oh god, one more time for the whale. Yeah, there's gonna be a certain segment of the audience that was their favorite part.
Yeah. I was just saying, this is what it was like. You're pulling open the truth. This is the truth, and the whale is. Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, so David Weiss said he thought it was more disruptive than flat Earth, and he said in on a couple different occasions that like first video he watched and he was just like, nah, but well, maybe, and then it took a while before he got to the second video, and on the second one he was like, what? And on the third one with the ear, he was just like, no way. And then by the time he got to the fourth one, it was game over, and he sent me messages on more than one occasion where it's just like, I hate you. You forever altered my my view of the world. I'm like, well, join the club. Yeah, you're one to talk, Mr. King of the Flat Smackers. It's like,
well, it's useful to look at organs, and like you brought a really unique and important amount of science to the human body, to anatomy, to geology. I think that was something that was lacking. Some people, in respect to other YouTubers who are working on this to an extent, trying to talk about anatomy, but I don't think they had quite the depth in anatomy that you did. So it really helped to bring so many pieces of evidence, so many different cited observances that could really build up to the point that, like we've said, how many coincidences until it's impossible to be. It has to be.
Finally, thank you. That's like the main point. Getting back to these different approaches, right? If you don't have a variable that you can manipulate in an experiment, a scientific experiment where you analyze data after the fact, we're all just we're not blind. We can look around us. We have our experience of the repetition of things and what things look like. And so you can actually do a lot by observing nature. And that was Victor Schauberger's whole point was observe and emulate nature, observe and copy nature. That's how you learn. That's exactly what Torrent Guasp did with the heart, right? He made the biggest discovery in the history of medicine. It took his colleagues 25 years before they acknowledged his contribution, right? And it's still not fully integrated into the curriculum of the even heart surgeons. Some of them are going through the entire school and maybe they've heard reference to it, but this changes everything about heart function. And in that video, Helical Heart, there's a guy named Gerald Buckberg, who was a famous cardiologist, who was really the discoverer of Torrent Guasp, because he was an international cardiologist who recognized the truth of what he was being shown and started to share it with the world. And that let the genie out of the bottle. Well, the genie's been out of the bottle for 20 years or more, and it's still not integrated. Our school books, when school kids, they should be taught about this. This ties into magnetics, into physics, it integrates everything. The knowledge of the heart is the most important, bit of all, and the trees, and it's like, even if I'm wrong about everything I presented, those two things are not wrong. and they change everything we understand about the nature of our reality. So, sorry,
man,
talk about a rant.
No, it's crazy though. It's amazing. So many of these things that we've been taking for granted, and that there are still people that are educated with 100-year-old or 50-year-old or the old ways, whatever was being taught by the Rockefeller, McGraw-Hill school books in the 1950s, or whatever has been acceptable since the military conquest of West Germany, whatever, all the same nonsense that they get stuck on, even though more of this data is out there, it's just hidden from people. And then so many people are told when they're researching to be humble, to question themselves, to, and which is good, because look at you, not just believing in everything that you see and testing all things, but maybe then it makes you less cocky about it, so less people hear about it for a while.
That's why I did the live stream on Paridolia recently, because there's so many things like this community, instead of coming up with an actual cohesive model that makes sense about the nature of our reality, which is really hard to do because we can't get outside the realm, whatever it is, to observe it from the outside. So we're inside of something, so we can never know the whole truth about it, right? Until, we pierce the veil or something, or maybe that's what people are, doing with psychedelics and through other means. Maybe
transhumanism,
CERN, transhumanism, all these, all the nightmare, future scenarios. But also, I mean, this ties into if our real history is our mythology and Hollywood and all of these grand tales that we grew up thinking were just fun stories, and they had animistic views on religion, so that nature was imbued with spirit, so a rock was a certain spirit, and they were so cute back then, but we're so sophisticated now. We've transcended their primitive beliefs, right, with our scientific method, and we are going to the stars. Oh, really? Are we going to space?
Just look where that thinking got us.
Are we going to space? Really? I haven't seen evidence of it.
We kind of just
not yet. Nothing.
This is a space that we are in.
Oh yeah. There's inner space, definitely, and you can access that in a variety of ways. And then there's the microscopic inner space. Even they're telling us it's all space, right? And then they've got to invoke dark matter and bosons and bozos and God particles and whatnot. And
safe space.
Maybe it's so simple you could explain it to a child, and you don't need particle accelerators and theoretical physicists that are basically off on a long string of theory tales. I mean, come on, the Big Bang.
Safe space is sort of a vacuum of ideas, right? It's a protected, safe space. So it is kind of we create an ideologically safe space, and then we try to build up as many, we try to destroy any evidence to the contrary most of the time. So I appreciate that what you're trying to do is just help people recognize that somebody's already facilitated making up an entire narrative in front of them, and everything about it's shattered. That's something that we've come,
and what I wanted to start off the whole interview with, or conversation, is this concept of discernment and being a truther and doing research. And what is research really? You can't take a picture of a skyline of a mountainscape from one angle at the right time of day with the right shadows and assume that it's a Titan. You got to look at it from a lot of different angles, and you got to get inside of its orifices, and that might not be a pleasant experience,
or assume that it's not.
Joking, but you gotta. That's where boots on the ground is so important. That's why I plug Paul Cook's channel all the time. I love John Levy. I've been listening to him for years.
Yes,
these guys are getting out and they're giving you real footage, and they're just digging into mainstream narratives and like, does this really make sense to you? And they're letting you decide for yourself. And I'm doing the same. Go out with what you've seen tonight. And see if you can find some Hearthstones. I've had people send me pictures of them and videos rotating them from all over the world. This is a very reputable phenomenon. It's not described in mainstream geology. Their explanation for it is clumps of clay that have been compressed, and they're semi-metamorphic. So they're starting to kind of almost bleed into other materials, but those other materials are softer. And so somehow they pop out and then end up in rivers and roll around, and and that's how we get this. Well, there is a type of rock that does that and looks like that, but it's got lots of lines going parallel in it, and it's far more likely that that's a chunk of big tree.
Right? Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not as crazy as it looks when you dig into it.
Not as crazy as you think. It's just a lot of data.
Sorry, we didn't interact with the chat at all, but.
No, we did, didn't we? It was actually 50 more messages. Thank you for saying that. You were such a conscious person. I was just going to jump out, but there's even a super chat, so I should look at that. That's Sticky Marks. What do you call a donkey with 3 legs? I don't know that one. I don't know. Do you guys know what a donkey with 3 legs is? Arthur?
Well, if it had 2 legs, I would say half-assed.
Yeah.
But it depends on which 2 legs.
I don't know. I didn't see the answer. You didn't supply us with an answer, so we're just supposed to guess? I don't know. Maybe next time we'll have to know. Raph, do you have a guess for a donkey with 3 legs?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's this one.
Yeah, we'll save it. But guys, thank you. And chat, we did answer some of your things. A wonky. Okay. Shake Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon with Shakespeare. I don't know. If you guys want to interact more. Oh, here it is. A wonky, but are you worth your salt? why I say it. Thank you, Sticky Marks. If you guys want to interact more directly with Stellium7 and with each other in the Discord, very conveniently, you can go to charterynova.com, click on the Discord link.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if, I put out videos. I get the highest view counts that I've ever gotten with the highest watch time with like almost like 99% like ratio. And sometimes I'm losing subs as that's happening. And it's just like, I'll put out content. I used to, it's like 100 new people come in, and not anymore. It's this little tiny crawl. So if you watch this and you go to my videos, if you watch any of the old videos, comment, because I never get any comments on any of my old videos. I used to get like hundreds of comments. The only comments I get now are on the new videos, and it's just a trickle in. So
lost out, but the algorithm.
The all ghoul rhythms.
Algorithm. All right. But guys, make sure that you go to the Discord, and you can find Stellium7 is in there as well. So
and don't be a conspiracy theorist, be a paying attentionist.
Yeah. There's another word too, pronoia, right? Isn't that the one where you think everything
I coined prospiracy.
Prospiracy.
It's when you come across a conspiracy that actually leaves you with less fear, and you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of fun. Tartaria was like that for me. Star forts, mud flood is kind of creepy because it involves cataclysm, but it's like, this stuff that's not like dark, they're trying to inject you with poison kind of stuff.
I mean, being drowned in mud.
Sometimes you need a break from that, and you need to just broaden your horizons with other stuff. And,
pronoia is supposed to be so prospiracy. I like your word because it's one that makes you feel good just directly. But pronoia is the idea that instead of paranoia, that things are working against you. It's either things are working towards your benefit, and that's kind of a nice one to have. I think we all needed a bit more. But guys,
like placebo, nocebo. Sorry.
Yeah. Placebo, and then there's another one of those too. That's like I forget. But there's a unifying antigen that just stops things from happening. You believe nothing will happen if you take it. Like garlic protects you from vampires. There's a word for that as well. It's not placebo, but close.
They've got a molecule for everything except health.
Yeah, but that's the garlic is just it's the consciousness thing. I don't know. Not going into vampires right now. Guys, see you later tonight on Wednesday Ultra. And thank you guys for being here, Raphael and Stellium. And I forgot to show you guys. I feel bad. I go to commency.at. 1 second, really quickly. Should have shown you this page.
Team Rabbit Hole.
Yeah.
Awesome podcast.
Window tab. Raphael, can I see here? You
can
Eugenie.
Shout out to Eugenie.
This link will be in the description as well, and both of their work is synchronized.
Link, the Stellium7, just so people see that there is at least one presentation.
Just German. Someone translated a couple videos into Italian, but surprisingly, they haven't been translated into Spanish at all, and I'm here in Spain, so interesting. Oh, one last thing. I met the son of the cardiologist. And his name was the same as the dad's. So he was junior. So I met Paco Torrent Guas. Paco was his nickname. And he came to my office, and I showed him all the stones. And I made a video about that called Son of a Titan. And that's on my channel. That's a really interesting video as well. Really showcasing the life of Francisco Torrent Guas and why his work is so important.
But both of these channels, Stellium's and Raf's channel, you can get the content through the allied category on Discord. Every video they make automatically posts to the Discord, so you can get any of their pieces through there.
Oh, cool.
So,
and it's also on Odyssey as a backup, and like I said, BitChute and Rumble.
Yeah. All right, guys. I will see you next time. And tonight, watch Wednesday Ultra. Be on at 8 Eastern Standard Time, 5 Pacific Standard Time. Peace.
Night, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Tartarian. Recent Tartarian. Recent Tartarian.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.